Chapter 640 19 million recruits. Then, he returned to his room and fell asleep without another word. A moment later. The door was opened. Leah walked in. She looked at Zhou Zhou, who was sound asleep on the bed and did not notice her arrival at all. A look of heartache flashed across her face. Then, she walked to Zhou Zhou's side and helped him slip off his coat. Then, she sat by the bed and looked at him gently. The next morning. After Zhou Zhou woke up, he immediately felt very energetic. At this moment, he felt a little strange and turned around. Only then did he see Leah sleeping beside him. Leah opened her eyes in a daze and saw Zhou Zhou looking at her. "Why are you looking at me?" Leah blushed. "You look good." Zhou Zhou grinned. He looked at the sleepy expression in the other party's eyes and lowered his head to kiss her. Then, he said, "Go back to sleep. I'm going to get busy. Then I won't continue to sleep either." Leah stood up while packing her clothes. She yawned and said, "Father is very busy in the Aurora Kingdom. I have to help Father." "How are things going with father-in-law?" Zhou Zhou asked as he put on his clothes. "Father is currently managing the Aurora Kingdom. Everything is developing in a good direction. It's just that there have been a lot of new subjects flooding into the Aurora Kingdom recently, so there are more things to deal with." But Father was happy. Father said that after the battle with the Taiyan Kingdom, there were not many people left in the Aurora Kingdom. However, with the addition of these new subjects, the number of subjects in the Aurora Kingdom is about to recover before the war. If this goes on, it might not be long before the number of subjects in the Aurora Kingdom exceeds the number of subjects at the peak of the Aurora Kingdom. Leah said with a smile. Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. Recently, because of the Lord Talent of Beauty and the support of various titles and other Lord Talents, there were indeed more and more new subjects joining the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Tens of millions of refugees were just the beginning. Just as Leah had said. Everything was developing in a good direction. Then, the two of them washed up and ate together before going off to do their own things. In front of the Gate of Summoning. Zhou Zhou looked at the huge door in front of him that was 100 meters tall and more than 50 meters wide. He silently summoned it in his heart. The Gate of Summoning suddenly lit up with a bright white light. Then, a large number of subjects walked out. After spending 100 extraordinary tier mist cores to accelerate, the 10,500 new subjects quickly walked out of the Gate of Summoning. "Greetings, my lord, X 10,500." The 10,500 new subjects said respectfully. "Welcome to Blazing Sun City." Zhou Zhou nodded. Then, he asked all the professionals to stand up and realized that he had summoned a total of 356 professionals. Among them were an extraordinary tier architect, an extraordinary tier blacksmith, an extraordinary tier carpenter, an extraordinary tier water element archmage, an extraordinary tier necromancer, an extraordinary tier beast tamer, and an extraordinary tier archaeologist. The rest were life professionals and combat professionals below extraordinary tier. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. After leveling up, the Gate of Summoning was very comfortable to summon. At this stage, it was definitely unimaginable for the lords of other races to be able to get 7 extraordinary tier elementary grade experts for free every day, be it lifestyle professionals or combat professionals. He didn't think too much about it. Zhou Zhou looked at their attributes and then asked the officials waiting at the side to lead them to their respective residences and work. Then, he led his troops to clean up the time ruins and went to Monster Ranch. At this moment, there were as many as 100 monster ranches, and there were as many as 10 million monsters cultivated inside. Those who did not know the inside story would probably think that they had arrived at the Crimson Kingdom. Zhou Zhou first led his troops to clean up the 50 scarlet monsters. After extracting the loots, he sorted out the loots from the monster ranch. Under the effect of the titles of King of Loots and Strongest Lord, in terms of the Mist Cores, he had obtained a total of more than 70 million green bronze tier mist cores, more than 52 million white silver tier mist cores, more than 26 million yellow gold tier mist cores, 17.5 million white platinum tier mist cores, more than 8.7 million diamond tier mist cores, more than 80,000 extraordinary tier mist cores, and 7,150 epic tier mist cores. There were also more than 500,000 normal soldier type class change certificates. 5.75 million King of Yellow Gold recruitment books, 5.75 million copies of the King of Yellow Gold class change certificate. 351,560 poison crossbow soldier recruitment books. 13.5 million violent storm spirit recruitment books. 13.5 million copies of the Violent Storm Spirit class change certificate. 564 proof of Legion fragments. 4 million true faith tier scarlet crystals. 2 million pious tier scarlet crystals. 3 million fanatic tier scarlet crystals. 400,000 iron-eating bear eggs. 4 million Fear Falcon wings and Fear Falcon Type 3 radar. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. More than 60 million units of raw gold. As for the other unimportant spoils of war, there was no need to elaborate. Zhou calculated the number of recruitment books he had received today and smiled. A total of 19,601,650 soldier-type recruitment books. Excluding the soldiers under the Star Alliance Master, there were only 22,523,212 soldiers under his command. The gains from this wave of Monster Ranch could almost double the total number of his soldiers. Without another word, he put these soldier-type recruitment books into the king's treasure box. Then, he went to the gate of summoning and threw them all in. Then, he spent 100 extraordinary tier mist cores to summon them all in one go. 6,001,650 new recruits appeared in front of Zhou. Since there were too many people, Bai Yun had no choice but to come over to maintain order. Zhou looked at the crowd of soldiers with a look of satisfaction. He now had 42,124,862 soldiers under his command. Including the soldiers of the Star Alliance, his total military strength had already reached more than 55.9 million. It was almost equivalent to the total military strength of the two Ice Demon Kingdoms. Zhou had never encountered an advanced kingdom before, so he did not know how many soldiers they had. However, he at least felt that he had enough strength to protect himself in many veteran intermediate kingdoms. The Monster Ranch was indeed upgraded correctly. If I have the chance in the future, I'll level up more. Zhou thought to himself. Now, among his many Lord talents, in terms of the importance of prioritizing upgrades, the Epic Tier Lord talent, Blessing of the War God, was ranked first. Extraordinary Tier Lord talent, Insight Defection, was ranked second. The third was the White Platinum Tier Lord talent, Monster Ranch. Unfortunately, these three Lord talents were lacking in talent crystal fragments. If he wanted to level up next, he had to continue accumulating them. At this moment, Qi Xiantian and Wuxia walked over. "Greetings, Your Majesty." The two of them came in front of Zhou and said respectfully. Zhou nodded. Sensing the other party's even stronger aura, a smile appeared on his face. "You've advanced." Chapter 641 76 million refugees. Yes, with the stimulation of the God Spirit's blood, Brother Qi and I have just broken through to the legendary tier elementary grade. Gu Qiao said with a smile. Qi Xiantian also nodded. He was also quite emotional. This Dragon Slayer's talent was really heaven-defying. He could actually bathe himself in the blood of a high-level bloodline creature. Then, he could ignore the limitations of his potential and forcefully break through his strength realm. No wonder the Dragon Slayer had disappeared for so many years. There were still some high-level bloodline races who refused to let go. This method was simply the natural nemesis of those with high-level bloodlines. Not bad. You are the first and second general in our territory to break through to the legendary tier. Everyone else is still a little lacking. Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. Everyone's breakthrough will happen in the next few days. Qi Xiantian was not proud. Zhou Zhou and Guoqiao nodded. With the blessing of the war god, the other people's breakthroughs were indeed only a few days away. The three of them chatted for a while before Qi Xiantian and Guoqiao left with the excuse of consolidating their realms. Seeing this, Zhou Zhou also came to the lord's shop. "Old Zhou, I'm here." Zhou Zhou said. "How has His Majesty been resting these past 2 days?" Zhou Qingmin stood up and walked to the counter, smiling with concern. "Not bad." Zhou Zhou acknowledged. Zhou Qingmin nodded. Then, he took out 3 boxes from under the counter. The first box contained a purple talent crystal. The second box contained a skill book. The third box contained a black ring. Zhou Zhou's gaze landed on the black ring. Wasn't this the mysterious business ring of the mysterious caravan? Zhou Zhou picked it up and looked at it. As expected, it was the mysterious business ring. The 1 million cubic meters of storage space inside might be welcomed if it were someone else. However, to Zhou Zhou, who had the king's treasure box and the small world in his body, this was completely useless. If not for the fact that the items in the mysterious business ring could only be used by the Lord himself unless they were specially labeled for others, Zhou Zhou would have casually rewarded him to one of his subordinates. He looked at the other 2 items. The purple talent crystal was a talent, War Command Master. Talent, War Command Master, talent effect, you have experienced thousands of battles of various sizes. In these battles, you have gradually grown step by step. You have transformed into a battle command master who can understand the timing of the battlefield. You are steady but not lacking in intelligence. You are decisive and not lacking in caution. In the face of most wars, you can rely on your exquisite commands to obtain victory on the battlefield. Even in the face of a top-notch war, you can calmly deal with it and protect yourself to the greatest extent. Zhou Zhou thought for a moment and quickly remembered. Wasn't this the personal talent of the holy clergyman of the elven race, Reina, yesterday? He did not expect to see it in the Lord's shop today. Then, he looked at the skill book. He realized that this was an extraordinary tier advanced grade spear skill, 9 shadows killing. It could instantly transform into 9 substantial spear shadows when the spear stabbed out, breaking through the illusion. Zhou Zhou had never seen this skill before. It was probably left behind by a martial artist who was good at spearmanship in the territory. Even though the effect of this skill looked a little normal, Zhou Zhou decided to buy it anyway with the intention of sweeping the goods. How many mist cores do these 3 goods cost? Zhou Zhou asked. Talent, War Command Master is worth 10 legendary tier mist core. 9 shadows killing is worth 20 extraordinary tier mist cores. Mysterious Merchant Ring, worth 500 legendary tier mist cores. Zhou Qingmin said. Zhou Zhou nodded. It was not considered expensive. He took out 510 legendary tier mist cores and 20 extraordinary tier mist cores and bought these 3 items. Then, he bade farewell to Zhou Qingmin and left. Just as he was about to return to the advanced grade Lord's Paradise and use these 3 items, Zheng Yuanqi suddenly walked over with a happy expression. Your Majesty! There's great news! Zheng Yuanqi shouted from afar. Zhou Zhou was stunned. He stopped and watched as Zheng Yuanqi came to his side. What is it? Are the refugees here again today? How many this time? 10 million. 20 million. Zhou Zhou asked curiously. It's not 10 million, nor is it 20 million. It's a total of 76 million. Zheng Yuanqi said excitedly. Zhou Zhou responded with an "oh" before coming to a realization. Huh? Zhou Zhou was stunned. What did 76 million refugees mean? An intermediate kingdom could only have a population of 76 million people, including all the soldiers and non-soldier subjects. Now, you're telling me that the entire population of an intermediate grade kingdom has arrived outside? What kind of joke was this? Zhou Zhou subconsciously felt that Zheng Yuanqi was joking. However, looking at Zheng Yuanqi's excited expression and thinking about his demeanor, Zhou Zhou felt that the other party did not seem to be such a person. Really? Zhou Zhou could not help but ask. Of course it's true. If you don't believe me, Your Majesty, you can go to the city wall to take a look. Zhou Zhou grabbed Zheng Yuanqi's hand and used spatial teleportation to reach the city wall before he could finish his sentence. And then he saw a dense sea of people that stretched as far as the eye could see. And it was the kind with families and luggages. Because there are too many refugees. Therefore, I immediately ordered the officials of the various states to separate these refugees and divert them to the territories of the other 5 subcontinents after I heard the news from the border soldiers. These refugees in front of us are just one part of them. About 20 million. The remaining 56 million refugees should have already reached the territory of the 5 states. Zheng Yuanqi explained. Zhou Zhou didn't say anything. He took out the Great Thousand Rivers and Mountains painting and opened it. His consciousness immediately entered it to check on the situation of the various states. A moment later, he retracted his consciousness and the Great Thousand Rivers and Mountains painting. There was still a confused look on his face. He had seen it just now. The 5 states had indeed welcomed more than 56 million refugees. At this moment, the officials of the various states were handling the household registration procedures for these refugees. After the procedures were completed, these refugees would officially become subjects of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. However, it was precisely because of this that made Zhou Zhou was even more puzzled. What day was it today? Why were there suddenly so many refugees? Zhou Zhou looked at Zheng Yuanqi. Zheng Yuanqi seemed to know what Zhou Zhou was thinking and said respectfully, I've already sent someone to investigate. Among the 76 million refugees, 40 million refugees came from various human factions in the human territory. On the way here, they were all protected by the human forces along the way, so almost no one died on the way, causing the loss rate of the refugee tide to almost be reduced to the lowest. As for the other 36 million refugees, they came from the territory of the Black Moon Kingdom, which had already perished. The Black Moon Kingdom is an advanced kingdom. When it was about to fall, the other party's king, the Black Moon King, issued an order. He said that all the subjects who were able-bodied in his kingdom should move to the Blazing Sun Kingdom and receive your protection, Your Majesty. They were led by a general named Yu Luo. Where is that general? Zhou Zhou immediately said. It's in the city. Take me to him. Yes, Your Majesty. Chapter 642 Conditions for Resurrecting a God Spirit in Front of a Staircase with Fewer People. General Yu Luo, who was wearing black armor, was sitting here. He looked at the people coming and going not far away. Seeing the smiles and happiness on everyone's faces, his cold heart could not help but be deeply touched. It had been a long time since he had seen such an expression on the subjects' faces on this high continent with a war theme. He could see that the expressions on these refugees' faces were not fake, but genuine from the bottom of their hearts. It was precisely because of this that he was even more shocked. His Majesty is right. The King of the Blazing Sun Kingdom should indeed be able to take good care of our Black Moon Kingdom subjects. But His Majesty, Yu Luo thinks that you can do it too. Why must you give up on yourself? General Yu Luo had a pained expression. He took out a black scimitar. A faint, cold moonlight condensed on the blade, making it look mysterious and fierce. General Yu Luo stroked the saber, his hands trembling slightly. General Yuluo. At this moment, a young man's voice sounded. General Yuluo paused for a moment and raised his head to look over. He saw a handsome man's face that was unforgettable. King of the Blazing Sun. His voice was hoarse. According to the legends he had heard, the King of the Blazing Sun had unparalleled charm. He didn't believe it at first, but he believed it now after seeing it in person. That's me. Zhou Zhou nodded. Sensing the other party's aura, he realized that there was an unstable divine power aura emanating from the other party's body. It seemed that General Yuluo was not far from the God Spirit realm. Zhou Zhou was a little surprised. Then, he said seriously, General, why don't you come with me to the conference room? You don't have to call me General. Just call me Yuluo. I don't have much to say. I'm not going to your conference room. You're the most outstanding rising star of our human race. You've been entrusted with the hopes of many humans. Yuluo's red eyes looked at him steadily. Take good care of the 36 million subjects of His Majesty of the Black Moon. You can definitely do it, right? Of course. Zhou Zhou was stunned for a moment before nodding solemnly. That's good. I heard that you can resurrect life forms. Even after a long time. Can you resurrect a low-tier deity-level intermediate-grade god spirit? Yuluo asked. The level is too high. My territory can't revive such an existence for the time being. But I should be able to do it in the future. Zhou Zhou thought for a moment and answered seriously. Previously, because he wanted to ask Heros for help, he had asked Carol Moeli if the god spirits could also be resurrected with the Great Resurrection spell. Carol Moeli's answer was yes. However, the requirements to resurrect a god spirit were extremely harsh. First, depending on the strength of the resurrected god spirit, different amounts of Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals are required. One was far from enough. The stronger one was, the more Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals they needed. Even the lowest level low-tier deity level elementary grade god spirit needed more than 10 basic Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals to revive. Second, if Carol Moela's strength had to reach the same level as the corresponding god spirit she was to resurrect. For example, if Carol Moeli wanted to resurrect a low-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirit, she had to be a low-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirit herself. Third, the medium of resurrection can't be like before, just an ordinary relic from when the god spirit was alive. It had to be an item with the other party's divinity. For example, divine blood, divine artifacts, divinities, and so on. Fourth, because resurrecting a god spirit was a big deal, Carol Moeli could no longer be the main caster of the resurrection spell. Or rather, the will of the goddess of life had to descend onto Carol Moela's body. Only the goddess of life, who was master god tier, could personally use her body in the material world to cast the great resurrection spell to revive a god spirit in the material world. Previously, she had said that he needed to use more Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals. Firstly, it was for the consumption of the great resurrection spell itself. Second, it was for the price of specially inviting the goddess of life to descend. Even so, the goddess of life could not descend with her true body, so she could only descend with her will. Therefore, under such circumstances, even the goddess of life could only revive god spirits below the true god tier level. It was also possible to resurrect a true god tier existence. However, that was not something that ordinary methods could do. Even Carol Moeli didn't know the exact method. Perhaps she would only know about this when her strength advanced to the level of a god spirit. Zhou Zhou easy explained these 4 conditions to the other party. After the other party heard this, a hint of hope appeared on his face, but he was also a little lost. He could indeed revive His Majesty after fulfilling these conditions, but how difficult was it to meet these conditions? He had never even heard of the Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals, what more about inviting the Goddess of Life's divine power to descend? The Goddess of Life was one of the 10 Master God tiers. Even the strongest human had only heard of her but had never seen her before. Divine power descending? What was he going to do? He pursed his lips and handed the black machete to Zhou Zhou. This is the divine artifact of His Majesty when he was alive. He is often nurtured with divine power. His divinity should be contained inside. Zhou Zhou took it and realized that it was a low-tier deity-level elementary-grade divine artifact called the Black Moon Blade. After sensing it, he nodded. There were indeed some divine substances inside. If you have the chance, please resurrect my Majesty. After I've done what His Majesty asked me to do, I'll also do my best to fulfill the conditions you mentioned to resurrect His Majesty. General Yu Luo looked at Zhou Zhou and said with a pleading expression. Zhou Zhou's expression did not change, but he was a little moved. An existence that was about to become a god spirit was so humble in front of him just for a distant hope. Okay. Zhou Zhou nodded seriously. Carol Moeli was now at legendary tier advanced grade. Putting aside the Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals, he had to upgrade his territory by 2 levels and let Carol Moeli advance to low-tier deity level intermediate grade. Zhou Zhou felt that it wouldn't be too long. The King of 10,000 Kings event in front of him. He believed that he would find enough resources to raise his territory to that level. On the other side, after hearing Zhou Zhou's words, a pale smile appeared on General Yu Luo's face. Thank you. After saying that, he took a deep look at the smile and happiness on the subjects' faces in the distance. Then, he looked at the black moon blade in Zhou Zhou's hand and turned to leave. Zhou Zhou also stood on the spot and watched the other party leave. At this moment, he suddenly sensed something and took out a golden token from the king's treasure box. This token was given to him by Bai He, and it was called the Knight's Sacred Token. Chapter 643 Death of the Black Moon King. With it, not only would one have an extremely high status in the Night Temple, but even amongst the entire human race. It would also be quite convenient to work in the various organizations in the Night Temple. This was also Bai He's main goal. Other than that, this Night Temple also had a connection function. At this moment, this golden token was emitting a faint gentle golden light. Clearly, someone was contacting him through the Knight's Sacred Token. Zhou Zhou didn't think too much about it. He directly injected chaotic energy into it and picked up the call. Zhou Zhou. Bai He's deep voice sounded from the token. Come to the Night Temple. I have something to tell you. Sure. Zhou Zhou did not say much. After saying that, he rushed straight to the Night Temple. Night Temple. Bai He's office. When Zhou Zhou arrived, he saw Temple Lord Bai He watching a video. However, Zhou Zhou did not see what was in the video because his back was facing him. Come on over. Let me show you a video. When Bai He saw Zhou Zhou, he nodded and waved at him. Zhou Zhou walked over and looked on. Bai He pressed the replay button. The video began to play again. On a city wall. A human with a black crown on his head and a silver moon mark on his forehead was standing here with a black scimitar in his hand. Under the city wall was the endless scarlet monster army. Among them, there was no lack of scarlet god spirits who emitted powerful god spirit auras. Black Moon King, surrender. A scarlet god spirit holding a purple whip and wearing a red mask floated in the sky, looking at the Black Moon King who was standing on the city wall. It's quite difficult for the entire human race to survive now. They can't even send you backups. We all know how difficult it is to become a god spirit. Why do you have to fight us to the death for a city that is about to fall? Join us and become a scarlet god spirit. My lord treats the god spirits of any race quite well. It's even possible for you to break through to the true god tier level in the future. The Black Moon King said nothing. He only raised his head and looked at the sky solemnly. The succubus god spirit came from the abyss. As a god spirit with a flexible bottom line, after being transformed into a scarlet god spirit, they immediately abandoned the abyss and hugged the thicker and bigger leg of the Crimson Overlord. Now that he saw this human god spirit not saying a word, he raised his brows and persuaded him a few more times. As an abyssal succubus, he was quite confident in his abilities of enchantment, bewitchment, and art of speech. However, he realized that the other party was still unmoved after he spoke until his mouth was dry. He gradually felt anger rise in his heart. If not for the fact that he was afraid that the other party would fight to the death, he would have directly self-destructed and perished together. Why would he waste his saliva for nothing? Attack! Kill this stubborn human god spirit. Whoever can pluck the divinity of this human god spirit first can come to my shrine to look for me tonight. The succubus god spirit said coldly. These words mixed with the law of enchantment made the tens of millions of Scarlet Army soldiers below immediately go crazy. Especially the other Scarlet God spirits, their bodies were restless and eager to try. He didn't have to wait long. A low-tier deity-level intermediate-grade god spirit was the first to rush out with a sinister smile. He held a spine-bone saber and charged at the Black Moon King. At this moment, under everyone's gaze, a relieved smile appeared on the Black Moon King's face. "It's finally here," he said softly. The world suddenly froze. It was as if time had stopped flowing. Everything in the world became motionless. The Scarlet God Spirit that was flying towards the Black Moon King with a sinister smile. A furious succubus God Spirit with a purple whip in his hand. There were also tens of millions of Scarlet Legion soldiers charging towards the Black Moon King. They all stopped in place with no change in expression. In this empty space, only the Black Moon King could still move. He looked at the sky. The huge round eye condensed from boundless pure white light. That was the legendary Supreme Eye. It was a supreme phenomenon that would only appear when the Supreme will manifest it in the world. Under the Supreme Eye, there was no distance in space. Time could not flow either. When the Black Moon King saw this, not only was he not afraid, but the smile on his lips also became more and more obvious. "Ha ha 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 ha," he laughed insolently. "Supreme will. Take this." He erupted with all the divine power in his body and even burned his divinity as he rushed towards the Supreme Eye. And then he vanished. It had truly disappeared. It was as if a bubble had burst. After the Supreme Eye disappeared and time and space returned to normal, on the ground. Only the black robe and the black scimitar were left. In front of the screen, Zhou fell silent. With a flip of his right hand, the black moon blade appeared in his hand. He faltered slightly before asking with a complicated expression, "Did he give it to you as well?" Zhou told He about Black Moon. "I see. Yu Luo probably took advantage of the chaos to obtain it." He was enlightened. Then, he looked at Zhou and said, "I didn't call you over for any other reason. I didn't want to burden you. I just wanted you to know what you should know. Otherwise, the Black Moon King's death would be too unknown." "I know." Zhou nodded and asked, "How are the Scarlet Legion doing?" The Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord made an agreement not to personally attack the forces below. Therefore, other than the death of the Black Moon King who violated the Supreme Agreement, after the Scarlet Forces regained their freedom, they sensed the traces of the Supreme Will and were so frightened that they fled. They didn't even search through the Black Moon Royal City. But even if they want to find something, they won't be able to. The subjects and treasures in the capital have already been moved away by the Black Moon King in advance. He said. Zhou nodded. After that, he didn't say anything else and directly asked Zhou to leave. After Zhou left, he looked at the video in front of him and replayed it. Then, he sighed slightly. "Black Moon King," he said softly. The entire upper echelons of the human race already knew about this matter. The attitudes of the upper echelons of the human race were very complicated. They did not expect the Black Moon King to actually do such a thing. But he continued to get busy without more thoughts about it. On the other side, after Zhou Zhou walked out of the Night Temple, he kept thinking about the video just now. At this moment, Zheng Yuanqi walked over quickly. "Your Majesty." Zheng Yuanqi said respectfully. "Why?" Zhou Zhou came back to his senses and asked. "Your Majesty, the 76 million subjects have all been registered. Among these subjects, I discovered 20 lifestyle professionals, with the lowest being epic tier and the highest being legendary tier. Other than that, there are no other high-level combat professionals. However, there are about 10 million professionals below the yellow-gold tier. Other than these professionals, there's also a Frost Dragoness with an extraordinary, tier hero's fate level slot, Hyvet, who has joined our Blazing Sun Kingdom. She has the bloodline of a Frost Dragon and her potential is at the legendary tier elementary grade." Zheng Yuanqi smiled. Zhou Zhou nodded. It seemed that his 20 reputation rating talents and the extraordinary tier hero rewarded by his Lord Talent had come after defeating the Ice Demon Kingdom. Chapter 640 For the first god of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, Lady Iceflower. The number of heroes under Zhou Zhou's command had actually reached 52, barely exceeding half a hundred. He had only established his kingdom a few days ago. It was unbelievable just thinking about it. Zhou Zhou thought for a moment and said, "Other than that hero, the professionals among the refugees will not be incorporated into my army for the time being. Instead, they will join the city guards to increase the city defense power and protect the capital and other territories and cities in the kingdom's territory. When they have enough combat experience, choose the best and join the Blazing Sun army in other outposts. As for the rest of the city guards, when the time is right, I will also give them an official position." He could not take all the soldiers away every time he went on an expedition. It was necessary to leave some soldiers to protect his territory. Previously, Zheng Yuanqi had sent people to gather the freelance professionals in the territory to form a Melitolike city guard to protect the territory. Now, the professionals among these refugees could greatly strengthen the strength of the city guards to protect their families and country, protecting his base camp from enemies from the outside world. This way, he could continue to focus on leading troops out to fight in the future. "Your Majesty is wise. Your Majesty, I have another piece of good news to report to you." When Zheng Yuanqi said this, he could not help but look excited again. "What else is good?" Zhou Zhou was stunned and asked in confusion. Zheng Yuanqi smiled and then said a piece of news that shocked and surprised Zhou Zhou. "An existence has advanced to the god spirit realm not long ago in our kingdom." "What?" Zhou Zhou came back to his senses and immediately asked, "Who is it?" "It's a member of the Ice Demon clan called Vicky. He was already a legendary tier powerhouse to begin with. However, the other party has never joined the army of the original Ice Demon Kingdom. Instead, he has been living in the Ice Demon King Kingdom as a solo expert to cultivate. He never appeared until the Ice Demon Kingdom was destroyed. However, last night, the other party obtained some fortuitous opportunity and suddenly advanced to a low-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirit. Then, he suddenly came over and said that he wanted to see your Majesty." At this point, a puzzled look appeared on Zheng Yuanqi's face. Logically speaking, this kind of lone expert had no attachments. Once he broke through to become a god spirit, the world's relationships, wealth, status, and other things were even less attractive to he. Normally speaking, after such lone god spirits broke through, they would usually leave their hometowns and wander the entire high continent or even the myriad worlds to find a place to build a divine kingdom. Or, they would be like Haras and Zhe Wu, finding a faction at least at the empire or even the divine kingdom level to rely on as their own faction and obtain the resources to advance to a higher level of the god spirit. Of course, there were also god spirits who would covet the power of the world and suddenly want to snatch a kingdom and become the ruler of a country to enjoy the benefits of power. However, Zheng Yuanqi abandoned this possibility without thinking. What a joke! The 4 god spirits of the Ice Demon Kingdom had all been killed by the Blazing Sun Kingdom. He was a low-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirit who had just become a god. Even if he wanted to take revenge, what trouble could he cause? Wouldn't that be courting death? When Zhou Zhou heard this, he also thought of what Zheng Yuanqi had thought of. He thought for a few seconds and asked, "Is he the subject of my Blazing Sun Kingdom now?" "Yes." Zheng Yuanqi nodded. All the ice demons in the Ice Demon Prefecture have changed their nationality to subjects of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. At that time, the other party was only a legendary tier advanced grade expert of the Ice Demon race. He had no objections to this matter and directly agreed. Zheng Yuanqi said. Zhou Zhou laughed when he heard that. Then there's no problem. The Lord Talent was created by the Supreme Will. Even if it was a god spirit, if it was at the true god tier master god tier level, it might be able to resist the effects of the Lord Talent. However, a small god spirit that had just advanced would definitely not be able to resist his Lord Talent. Where is he now? When did he come? Just got here. Alright, let's go find Herass and the others first before meeting this new god spirit of our Blazing Sun Kingdom. Zhou Zhou already had some guesses about the other party's sudden breakthrough to become a god spirit. However, he would not meet the other party so rashly. In any case, with Herass and the others around, it would be a waste of his resources if he did not use their power to scare them. Your Majesty is wise. Zheng Yuanqi smiled and nodded. Then, the two of them walked towards Herass and Zhe Wu's residence. In a reception room in the administrative hall. When Zhou Zhou, Zheng Yuanqi, Herass, and Zhe Wu arrived, they saw the ice demon god spirit that Zheng Yuanqi had mentioned. The other party was a female ice demon god spirit. He was tall and had a cold face. He had ice blue eyes and wore an ice blue dress, and his ice blue hair was tied into the shape of an ice flower. At that moment, he was sitting in his seat. Faint ice flowers fluttered around him. An invisible divine might fluctuated from his body, giving him an inexplicable sense of deterrence. However, other than Zheng Yuanqi who felt a little pressured, the other 3 people present treated this as if it was nothing. Zhou Zhou silently released an invisible barrier on Zheng Yuanqi, offsetting the divine pressure that the other party was enduring. The pressure on Zheng Yuanqi instantly dissipated, and his expression instantly returned to normal. Then, Zhou Zhou's gaze landed on the ice demon god spirit again. It had to be said. Even though the human race and the ice demon race had different aesthetic standards, this female ice demon in front of him still gave him a beautiful and cold feeling. He looked at him. Attribute information appeared. Subject, Vicky, God name, God of Ice and Flower, Lady Ice Flower, Divine Duty, Ice and Snow, Territory, Blazing Sun Kingdom, Strength Level, Low-Tier Deity Level Elementary Grade, Ability Overview. Vicky is a member of the Ice Demon King clan who was stranded among the people due to the internal strife of the royal family. Before he died, his butler told he that unless he had a certain level of strength, he must never return to the royal family to take revenge. The god spirits of the Ice Demon Kingdom would not spare he just because he had the royal family's bloodline. Vicky trusted his butler very much, so he had been cultivating diligently. It was only when he became a legendary tier advanced grade powerhouse that he learned that the Ice Demon King clan had already destroyed itself and was at a loss as to what to do. It was only when he became a god spirit that his mind suddenly gave he instructions, allowing he to come to the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Bloodline, Ice Demon Race Bloodline, 80%, Ice Demon God Bloodline, 20%, Skills, Law Skill, Ice Flower Rain, Low-Tier Deity Level Elementary Grade Summoning Snow King, Legendary Tier Elementary Grade Blizzard, Epic Tier Advanced Grade, Invisibility, Epic Tier Advanced Grade, Extreme Ice Arrow, Epic Tier Advanced Grade Ice Coffin Spell, Epic Tier Elementary Level Elementary Grade Summoning Big Hail, Extraordinary Elementary Grade Snowfall Spell, Diamond Elementary Grade Ice Hockey Spell, Loyalty. 90, Potential, High Tier Deity Level Advanced Grade. Zhou raised his eyebrows. A normal ice demon was directly promoted to a god spirit. Chapter 645 Vicky's heart. Normally speaking, most existences who could become god spirits had the potential to become heroes. Therefore, most god spirits first mastered hero skills from normal life forms and became heroes. Then, with the hero slots and hero skills as the foundation, they mastered god spirit slots and law skills and broke through to become god spirits. It could only be said that he was talented to directly break through to become a god spirit without first becoming a hero. However, he would definitely be slightly weaker than those existences who had both the destiny of a hero and the slot of a god spirit in the future. Their slots and hero skills were slightly inferior after all. At the same time, Vicky also saw Zhou and the others. His gaze landed on Herass and Zhe Wu. Sensing the powerful divine might on them, he immediately stood up and said respectfully, "Greetings, high-tier god spirit." Herass and Zhe Wu responded calmly. Then, Herass looked at Zhou and clicked his tongue in wonder. "You're really lucky. You've only established the kingdom for 2 days, and a god spirit has already been born in the territory. With such a foundation, we can basically transition to the advanced kingdom smoothly as long as we don't provoke any powerful countries in the future. That depends on whether he is willing to stay in our Blazing Sun kingdom." Zhou chuckled. Then, they sat down and looked at Vicky. "Sit down first. What are your plans for the future?" I plan to stay in the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Is that all right?" Vicky hesitated. "Of course, but can I know why? You're a member of the royal family of the Ice Demon Kingdom. Are you staying with me because you want to take revenge?" Zhou said jokingly. Unexpectedly, Vicky seemed to have been provoked and hurriedly stood up. No. Why would I have such thoughts? I was chased out by the former Ice Demon King race. The Ice Demon Kingdom's Ice Demon King race only has aggro for me, not kinship. Originally, I wanted to wait for my cultivation to be successful before taking revenge myself. In the end, you took action in advance. To be honest, I feel a little regretful." Vicky smiled bitterly. "And I also saw that you didn't treat our Ice Demon clan unfairly. The subjects of the Ice Demon clan are living quite well here. If you treat our Ice Demon clansmen like slaves and livestock, I might have some hostile thoughts. However, since you're so good to us, I can't help but agree with you. Why would I take revenge on you?" Zhou nodded. The war between the lords of all races was destined to end in a harmonious race. This was also the reason why he treated all other races equally. In any case, there was the peaceful times. Zhou was not worried that they would cause any trouble. This was also the reason why he was so confident in creating racial harmony. Of course, he would definitely be biased towards the human race. This was decided by his own race. He also loved the human race. If others said it, there was nothing he could do. Then, are you planning to stay in our Blazing Sun Kingdom continuing your cultivation for God Spirit, or are you planning to work for me and follow me to battle the myriad races and witness their glory? Zhou asked. Before I answer this question, I would like to ask your Majesty a question. Vicky looked at Zhou and said. What is it? Actually, I could already sense that even though I can advance to become a God Spirit, the success rate is only about 40%. But when I was cultivating last night, I suddenly felt that my chances of becoming a God Spirit seemed to have been affected by an external force, causing my chances of becoming a God Spirit to increase by about 10%. Excuse me, are you helping me from the shadows? As soon as these words were spoken, Zhou Zhou did not show anything. However, Heraus and Zhe Wu were suddenly stunned. Then, they looked at Zhou Zhou with bright eyes. Increase the probability of becoming a god spirit by 10%. This was no small matter. If it were the elven races of the Elven Empire, their chances of becoming a god spirit would increase by 10% when they advanced to the god spirit realm. The Elven Empress Elizariel was even willing to directly start a war between empires that were evenly matched. Zhou Zhou also felt their gazes and felt a little helpless. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have asked this fellow. There was no way to avoid this question now. If he didn't explain it clearly, he didn't know what these two god spirits would think. He flipped his right hand and a bone necklace appeared in his hand. The faint fluctuations of a special divine artifact and the terrifying pure power of faith made the three god spirits present instantly fall silent. Race divine artifact, Zhe Wu licked his lips. Heraus looked at this race divine artifact with blazing flames in his eyes. Vicky stared at the necklace and exclaimed excitedly, "This is our ice demon race's divine artifact." Zhou Zhou nodded. It was the Ice Demon race's race divine artifact, the Ice Demon God's blessing. On the other hand, Heraus and Zhe Wu were stunned when they heard that it was a race divine artifact of the Ice Demon race. Then, the two of them hurriedly sensed the power of faith on it. When they really felt the pure faith of the Ice Demon race from the terrifying divine power of faith, they could not hide the disappointment in their eyes. A divine artifact of a single race was simply worthless to other races. This was because the effect of its race's divine artifact was unable to affect other races. In the eyes of this race divine artifacts were supreme treasures for them. Even if they had a true divine artifact to exchange for, perhaps the races who had a divine artifact of the race would not be willing to exchange for it. In the eyes of the other races, a race divine artifact was at most a collectible. Unless this other race took in the race that the divine artifact belonged to as a subsidiary race, it would not be of much use. Between the various races and factions, rarely would there be racial wars to snatch divine artifacts of races other than their own. Just like Zhou Zhou. Everyone knew that this human lord, Zhou Zhou, had 3 race divine artifacts. One of the incomplete swords of Xian Yuan was a race divine artifact exclusive to the humans of Cerulean Planet. The second was the Lucky Star. It was a public-type race divine artifact. Because it was now bound to Zhou Zhou, it was useful to the entire human race. The third item was the Ice Demon God's Blessing, which only worked on the Ice Demon clan. As for why Zhou Zhou was well known now, apart from the achievement he had worked hard for in the 2 Supreme Will activities, another huge reason was because of the Lucky Star, a public-type divine artifact of the race. As for the other 2 divine artifacts, the people of foreign races were not that interested. After all, it was useless against his own race. If they only wanted to stop the development of the human race and the human race on the Cerulean Planet, they would think of snatching these 2 race divine artifacts, but they would definitely not pay too much of a price. After all, it was useless for him to snatch it back. Speaking of which, when Zhou Zhou saw that Heraus and Zhe Wu were not interested in this race divine artifact, he heaved a sigh of relief. He was still a little wary of these 2 deities who could only be considered as hired gods and not native subjects. At this moment, Vicky also saw the effect of this divine artifact clearly. He looked enlightened. Then, he stood up and said to Zhou Zhou respectfully, "Since my opportunity to become a god was bestowed by a divine artifact of the race, it's equivalent to being bestowed by your majesty. God of Ice and Flowers, Vicky, is willing to serve your majesty and conquer all races." Chapter 646 Territory Conflict. A smile appeared on Zhou Zhou's face. "Sure, in the future, Zheng Yuanqi will arrange a special benefit for you that belongs solely to the god spirits." Also, Zhou Zhou waved his right hand. An ice-blue robe appeared in front of him. "This king has said before. No matter who breaks through to become a god spirit, I will give them a low-tier deity-level elementary grade divine artifact. This ice demon sacrificial robe is your reward. Zhou Zhou said. Thank you, Your Majesty. Vicky was ecstatic. While this was the first time he became a god spirit, he also knew how precious divine artifacts were. He had just become a low-tier deity-level god spirit, but he had already given away a divine artifact that belonged to him. This was definitely something that countless other god spirits dreamed of. Even Heraus and Zhe Wu looked envious when they saw this. When they first became god spirits, they did not receive such treatment. Previously, their divine artifacts were either passed down from their race or obtained from the forbidden mystic realm by taking countless risks. Unlike Vicky, directly obtaining a low-tier deity-level elementary grade divine artifact after becoming a god spirit. Even though they also had Zhou Zhou's 6 divine artifacts, they were only temporarily lent to them and did not belong to them. After completing the contract, he had to return it. At this moment, the 2 god spirits wanted to leave the Elven Empire and join the Blazing Sun Kingdom, becoming the official offerings of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. However, it was impossible to let them leave with the current situation of the Elven Empire. They looked at each other and saw helplessness in each other's eyes. On the other side, Vicky took the ice demon sacrificial robe and put it on. He was beautiful to begin with. Now that he was wearing the ice blue robe, he looked even more beautiful. Your Majesty, I would like to take 2 days off. At this moment, Vicky stroked the ice demon sacrificial robe on her body and said in embarrassment. Why? Zhou Zhou was stunned. I plan to find a suitable star to build my own divine kingdom. This process will take about 2 to 3 days. Is that okay? If Your Majesty is worried, you can come with me. Vicky said. As soon as these words were spoken, Heraus and Zhe Wu immediately looked at him in surprise. It was as if they could not believe that the other party would say such a thing. Was this lady crazy? Did she trust the King of the Blazing Sun that much? Zhou Zhou also came to a realization. An existence that had just become a god spirit indeed had to establish his own divine kingdom. According to his bloodline inheritance, the establishment of a divine kingdom meant the complete stabilization of one's divinity. Unless there were special circumstances, such as serious injuries, the god spirit would not be in danger of falling as long as the divine kingdom existed. At the same time, the establishment of the divine kingdom also represented the faith of the god spirit that they represented. With a truly stable anchor point in the world, after the true believers under them died, they would also have a place for their souls to return to. The speed at which their faith accumulated would also greatly increase. It could be seen how important a divine kingdom was to god spirits. However, it was precisely because of this that typically, the location of a divine kingdom was the biggest secret of god spirits. Normally, god spirits would not tell outsiders the location of their divine kingdom. Otherwise, once the location of the divine kingdom was revealed, it would attract external enemies to attack. Once the divine kingdom was broken, the god spirits would fall from their positions and become normal extraordinary tier life forms. In more serious cases, there was a high chance that they would even die. This was also why Heraus and the others were so surprised by Vicky's words. Even if Vicky was indebted to Zhou Zhou for becoming a god, there was no need for him to reveal the location of her divine kingdom. Zhou Zhou thought about it and finally gave up on the idea of following Vicky to build a divine kingdom. I'm really curious. However, 2 to 3 days is too long. I still have to continue the activities of the Supreme Will. Go by yourself and be careful. Zhou Zhou said. Vicky's loyalty was very high. It had already reached 90 points. Such high loyalty might be related to the fact that he had helped the other party eliminate the royal family of the Ice Demon Kingdom and the opportunity for he to become a god spirit. Therefore, he was naturally not worried that the other party would take the divine artifact and run away. Heraus and Zhe Wu were even more puzzled upon hearing Zhou Zhou's words. Did this lord and subordinate trust each other so much? One was willing to reveal the location of his divine kingdom, while the other was willing to give the divine artifact to a god spirit he had just met and even dared to let the other party leave the territory with the divine artifact. The two gods found it unbelievable. But it had to be said. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. They were very envious of such heart-to-heart behavior. Yes, Your Majesty. Vicky said gratefully. Then, they left the reception room together. After Zhou Zhou and the others left the reception room, Vicky took the lead to bid farewell to the others. Then, she flew into the sky alone and quickly disappeared. Among the many stars in the legendary star sea, other than most of them being natural stars, a small portion of the other stars are projections of the divine kingdoms in the world after the god spirits established them. That's something to look forward to. Zhou Zhou looked in the direction where Vicky flew off and sighed. With Your Majesty's talent, it will definitely be very easy for you to become a god spirit. Heraus smiled. Zhe Wu nodded. The two god spirits were discerning people. They could naturally tell at a glance how astonishing Zhou Zhou's aptitude was. He could use law skills and divine artifacts before becoming a god spirit. He could even use divine artifacts that were above his level. Even the top bloodline races like the original spirit race, the chaos gods race, and the shepherd's god race could not compare to this ability. Zhou Zhou smiled and did not say anything. By the way, Your Majesty. I saw that in your territory, other than humans, there are many other races. There are even races of fog monsters. They should be the enemies you defeated before and surrendered to you, right? Aren't you afraid that conflict will break out between them because of what happened in the past? At this moment, Zhe Wu asked curiously. Zhe Wu and Heraus had seen many lords like Zhou Zhou, who encouraged the fusion of many races. But for someone like Zhou Zhou, they had just arrived at the high continent not long ago, yet they dared to gather so many people of foreign races together as their subjects. They even dared to bring them out to fight without any worries. This was the first time they had seen a lord who was not afraid of being stabbed in the back. There were only two possibilities for this situation. Either Zhou Zhou was a fool, which was naturally impossible, or Zhou Zhou had the confidence to resolve the problem of racial integration. Zhe Wu and Heraus were puzzled. Where did Zhou Zhou's confidence come from? The future of the war of the Lord of all races is the future of harmonious coexistence between different races. That's a given. Therefore, since I can try it when there are few subjects, I'm still willing to try it when I'm confident that I can ensure the safety of myself and the subjects. Otherwise, when there are more subjects in the future, when a new race is integrated, the repulsive force might be very strong. Zhou Zhou said half-truthfully. His greatest confidence was the diamond-level Lord talent, peace and prosperity. Now, this confidence was naturally the extraordinary level Lord talent, peaceful times. However, this was not something that outsiders could tell. Chapter 647 Long. Eye of the Heavens Anger Secret Law. Moreover, what he said was part of his true thoughts. When there were few subjects, everyone was anxious about survival every day and focused on it. Why would they care about the people of foreign races? The more people of foreign races came, the stronger the territory would be, and the higher the probability of survival in the battles of the Lord of all races. At this moment, the subjects could not wait for more people of foreign races to come. On the contrary, if there were more subjects of the same race in the territory, the pressure on survival would be greatly reduced. Then, this race would naturally begin to instinctively exclude outsiders to ensure the orthodoxy of bloodline and status. At that time, it would not be easy to promote the harmonious coexistence of multiple races. Actually, so far, there are still some violent conflicts in my territory. The reason for the conflict between them is mostly because of old grudges. The reason for the conflict between them is mostly because of old grudges. Once victory and defeat are decided, regardless of life and death, the grudges between the two sides must be written off. We can't implicate our descendants. Zheng Yuanqi's idea is to set up a life and death arena. It's best to settle the grudges of our generation in our generation. There's no need to implicate the next generation. They don't know anything. They haven't done anything. There's no need for them to accept the aftermath of the war. That way, our descendants will always be unlucky. I don't have a better solution, so I let Zheng Yuanqi do as he wants. Zhou Zhou said. Actually, there was one thing he did not say. Those who initiated the life and death duel were mostly the few monster subjects and people of foreign races who joined later. As for the human subjects and some other people of foreign races, almost no one would take the initiative to initiate a life and death duel. Why? This was because ever since he rose to prominence, especially after obtaining a heaven-defying divine art like the small resurrection spell, his soldiers had always maintained a shocking record of 0 deaths. No one had died, so there was naturally no deep hatred. Naturally, no one would initiate a life and death duel out of boredom. Only a very small number of the people of foreign race soldiers who had been instigated by incite defection started a life and death duel because they had witnessed their own people being killed by human soldiers and other people of foreign race soldiers. However, there were very few of them. That was because be it the high loyalty brought about by incite defection or the recently promoted peaceful times, they subconsciously did not do anything that would affect the peaceful atmosphere of the territory. In addition, they had also enjoyed the benefits of the small resurrection spell. They had also seen more and more people of foreign races become subjects of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. They had also seen them build the Blazing Sun Kingdom together with him and their friendship. Most importantly, it was the peaceful social atmosphere that people had cherished for a long time. Therefore, unless it was a deep-seated hatred. Otherwise, not many subjects would initiate a life and death duel. So much so that most of the life or death arenas set up by Zheng Yuanqi were unused. It might only open once or twice a week. Haras and Zhe Wu sighed with emotion when they heard that. In the High Continent, how to resolve the various bad trails left behind by the war had always been one of the main concerns of the lords. However, no one had a good solution. It was the same even for Divine Kingdom lords. Perhaps it was only when the mighty power of time turned everything into history in books that people would gradually forget these days of blood and fire. Zhou Zhou did not say anything else after all. He first gathered all the soldiers, including the Star Alliance's lord and soldiers, as well as the mysterious caravan. Then, they used the spatial teleportation array to arrive at a Black Iron Tier territory that they had conquered last night. After the army teleported here, Nazario, who was in charge of guarding this place, immediately flew over. "Your Majesty," it said in a low voice. "Did anything happen last night?" "No." Nazario shook his head. Zhou Zhou nodded. "Come on," he said. Then, through Jing Fugue and his mysterious caravan, they entered the Myriad Illusions small world again. In the Myriad Illusions small world, Zhou Zhou and company had just appeared in the Myriad Illusions small world when the scene they saw stunned them. This was because they actually saw Cab and more than 100 illusory fate race beings not far from them. It was as if they knew that they would appear here and waited here. At the same time, Zhou Zhou also saw an illusory life race member in a yellowish-brown robe. He stood alone. The other illusory fate race members seemed to be very afraid of him. They all distanced themselves from him and looked at him with fear from time to time. Zhou Zhou narrowed his eyes slightly. "This guy. Sorry for the inconvenience." "Thank you very much." He had not seen it when he came yesterday. King of the Blazing Sun, at this moment, when Cab and the other illusory life race members saw Zhou Zhou and the others appear, their eyes lit up. They distanced themselves from the yellow-brown-robed illusory life race member and came to their side as if they were escaping. "What are you doing here?" Zhou asked. He asked. It was Long who calculated it. Cab whispered. "That's Long." Zhou looked at the mysterious existence in the yellowish-brown robe. "What Long?" "He's a demon that eats my people. He must be up to no good to call us here. We have to be careful. That guy might be hiding something. Maybe he called us here as part of a conspiracy." The other members of the phantom race were clearly very afraid of Long. When they heard this, they seemed to be agitated and said excitedly. "Yes, that's him," Cab said with a complicated tone. Zhou looked at Long. He could sense that the illusory fate race member, Long, was also looking at him. However, what surprised Zhou was that he could sense that the other party's life force was like a candle flame in the wind. It was obvious that he did not have long to live. "Your Majesty, I know what you want, okay?" At this moment, a hoarse voice reached Zhou's ears. It was Long's voice transmission. "You know what I want?" Zhou raised his eyebrows. "What you want is probably the divination method and Bodhi Supreme that our illusory life race found more than 10,000 years ago, right?" Long said. "How do you know that?" "At our illusory life race's current stage, the only things that can still be considered valuable are those few things." "What's so difficult to guess?" Long said calmly. "How about we make a deal?" "What deal?" "If you can leave this place with the members of the illusory life race, they'll give you the Eye of the Heavens Anger secret law, the Sealing the Heavens and Earth Void Life concealing technique, and the Bodhi Supreme that has one use left. If you can't bring the illusory life race out of here, they'll still hand over the Eye of the Heavens Anger secret law and the Sealing the Heavens, Earth, and Void Life concealing technique to you. Then, you can leave this place and never interfere in the matters here again. By the way, the Eye of the Heavens Anger secret law is the secret technique you want to find." Long said. When Zhou heard this, he immediately narrowed his eyes and looked at it. Chapter 648 Successfully Leaving. The value of the myriad illusions. Small world. "I don't understand you. In the eyes of the illusory life race, you're clearly a demon that eats its own clansmen and has even reared them for consumption. Why are you actually treating the illusory life race better now? Why? Did you suddenly have a conscience when you saw an outsider enter?" Zhou asked. "There's no point." Long said. "What?" Zhou raised his eyebrows. "I said, there's no point. No matter what my initial goal is, what's done is done. Other than knowing the meaning of what you were thinking back then, it doesn't mean much to outsiders." Long said. A look of contemplation flashed across Zhou's eyes. Then, he said calmly, "But if I kill you, I think I can get what I want." "You can't have it. This is the world of our illusory life race. I was once the patriarch of the illusory life race. If I want to hide something, no one can get it. Furthermore, only I, the former patriarch, still have the Eye of the Heavens Anger secret law and the Sealing the Heavens, Earth, and Void Life concealing technique. The other illusory life races don't know. I'm dead. You won't get anything." Long said. "Can't get it?" Zhou raised his eyebrows. "Can I say that I've already seen the two loots in your spoils of war, the Eye of the Heavens Anger secret law and the Heaven Sealing Void Life concealing technique?" On the other hand, Bodhi Supreme was indeed not on him. However, Zhou was not afraid of this. At most, he would get Xiao Xian to come over and directly start the blessing of the God of Fortune mode. He thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. "I'll try," Zhou said. Long said nothing, just stared at him in silence. Zhou did not say anything else. Even though he had the confidence to obtain the treasure, he was more curious about what the other party was selling. Even though the two of them said a lot, it was only a matter of a thought. The illusory life race members only felt that the human lord's gaze drifted for a while before he focused his gaze on them again. "My lord. Can you take us away now?" An elder one of the illusory life race asked anxiously. It was the elder one from the illusory life race who asked Zhou Zhou if he could take them away yesterday. The other illusory life race members also looked at Zhou Zhou. Due to their failure yesterday, the illusory life race did not have much hope. But what if? I can try. Looking at the gazes of the illusory life race, Zhou Zhou said with a faint smile. "Elder Zheng. Get ready." Zhou Zhou said to Zheng Fugui. "Okay." Zheng Fugui grinned. Then, he stood up and looked at the 100-odd members of the illusory life race tribe in front of him. He looked around and asked, "Is there anyone who is willing to try to leave this place with me?" The illusory life race members looked at each other. "I'll do it." Cab raised his hand and said weakly. Zhou Zhou and Zheng Fugui nodded. Then, Zheng Fugui helped the other party put on the mysterious caravan's starry sky merchant robe. With a casual wave of his hand, he opened up a complete and stable spatial passageway. As soon as the spatial passageway opened, all the members of the illusory Fate clan immediately looked at the tunnel with desire in their eyes. Even Long, who was not far away, took 2 steps forward and stopped. "Come on." Zheng Fugui said kindly to Cab. "Will do." Cab swallowed his saliva and walked into the spatial passageway with Zheng Fugui. The next second, all the life forms present saw Zheng Fugui and Cab walk into the spatial passageway together and disappear. Then, the spatial passageway closed as well. The illusory life race waited for a while. When he realized that Cab was not expelled, their expressions immediately became excited. Some of the illusory life race members even knelt on the ground in excitement and cried bitterly. Cab didn't come back. He really didn't come back. He must have gone out. He must have successfully gone out. Is the outside world really that good? Can we eat our fill in the future, Mom? Mom doesn't know either, but no matter where we go, it's better than staying in this world and waiting for death. All the illusory life race members were extremely excited. Some of the illusory Fate race members who were born in the myriad illusions small world asked in confusion and desire. Our illusory life race has finally escaped this prison. The old man who spoke first looked up at the sky with tears streaming down his face. Wait a minute. Maybe it's a trap. The other illusory life race member was still a little cautious. He looked at Zhou Zhou and said, "Lord, can you let Cab return? I don't have any other intentions. I just want to confirm his safety." The others also looked at Zhou Zhou. Understandable. Zhou Zhou nodded and communicated with Zheng Fugui in his heart, asking him to bring Cab back. As the spatial passage opened up again, Zheng Fugui walked out of the spatial passage while holding Cab's hand. At this moment, Cab's face was rosy, and his expression was filled with shock and reluctance. From time to time, he would turn around to look at the spatial passageway. When he saw the spatial passageway close, he could not help but reveal a disappointed expression. "Child. How's the outside world? Child, did you sense the natural energies? Child, is the outside much better than the myriad illusions small world?" Cab had just returned. A group of people from the illusory life race clan immediately surrounded him and spoke excitedly. Cab immediately nodded and told everyone what he had seen outside. Even though there was not much content, it still dazzled the illusory life race as if they had personally experienced it. "Everyone. As long as you promise me here, you will become subjects of my blazing sun kingdom now. I'll send everyone out immediately." Zhou Zhou struck while the iron was hot and looked at the illusory life race clansmen. The members of the illusory life race agreed without hesitation. just as they agreed to become the Blazing Sun Kingdom's subjects. The extraordinary tier Lord Talent, peaceful times immediately took effect. When all the illusory life race members looked at Zhou Zhou again, their eyes were filled with heartfelt respect and love. Zhou Zhou smiled. Then, without wasting any time, he asked Jing Fugue to put on the mysterious merchant's attire for all the members of the illusory life race. Then, he opened a spatial passageway and left the prison that had trapped the members of the illusory life race for tens of thousands of years. At the moment before he left, none of the illusory fate race members showed any reluctance to leave this place. They didn't even look back. Even children were like this. It was obvious how much they wanted to escape this place. After all the members of the illusory life race left, Zhou Zhou looked at Long, who was motionless not far away. "Are you leaving too?" he asked. Long stood quietly where he was. Then, he nodded and silently walked towards the spatial passageway before disappearing. Only Zhou Zhou and the others from the Blazing Sun Kingdom were left in the Myriad Illusions small world. This world is not bad. If I can master the way to enter and exit freely and prepare enough resources, I can use it as a secret base. Wu Xian looked at this desolate world and lamented. Zhou Zhou also nodded. It was a world after all. No matter how desolate it was, it still had its value. He thought for a moment and chose to leave 100 soldiers and enough supplies here to guard this world. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. In that case, the mysterious caravan's unlimited rite of passage, Empire level, could still be used. Otherwise, if there was not a single faction in this world, the mysterious caravan's unlimited rite of passage, Empire level, would lose its effect, and they would not be able to come here again. Chapter 649 Bodhi Supreme. After Zhou Zhou left behind 100 soldiers and corresponding survival resources, he did not stay any longer and left through the spatial passageway opened by the mysterious caravan with the other Blazing Sun Kingdom members. In the outside world, after Zhou Zhou and the others came out, they saw that Long, Cab, and the other illusory life race members had already boarded a starry night and were looking at the sea below excitedly through the starry night's external simulation mode. What dense water vapor! I've never felt such dense water vapor in my life. Is this the sea recorded in the books? It's so vast. Why does the seawater look a little dark? It's so scary, as if it leads to an abyss. More than 100 illusory life race members discussed animatedly, as if they had just come to a big city from a small place. Zhou Zhou and the others looked at each other and smiled. Even though they had a motive for rescuing them, Zhou Zhou and company still felt a sense of accomplishment when they saw them. "Thank you, Your Majesty. If not for His Majesty, we might have been trapped in that cage for the rest of our lives. We might not have seen such a scene even until we died. It's fine for us old fellows, but children can't have no future." At this moment, an elder one of the illusory life clan trembled as he came in front of Zhou Zhou and bowed respectfully. Then, he sighed. The other illusory life race members also reacted when they heard this. They surrounded Zhou Zhou and expressed their gratitude. The little cab looked at Zhou Zhou with shining eyes, his gaze filled with admiration. "You're too kind, everyone." Zhou Zhou nodded. After chatting with them for a while, he walked towards Long. When the illusory life race saw this scene, a hint of surprise flashed in their eyes. Some of them looked hesitant, but in the end, no one stopped them. Because they trusted their emperor. "How's the outside world?" Zhou Zhou came in front of Long and looked at him. This guy's strength was only extraordinary tier advanced grade. Zhou Zhou was already at the intermediate grade epic tier. He could fight a god spirit, so he was naturally not afraid of him. At this moment, Long Zheng was standing in front of the exterior simulation, looking at the sea scenery outside in a daze. After hearing Zhou Zhou's words, he nodded subconsciously. Nice. I just can't get enough of it. I will bring the thing you want to you. He said. Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up. He took it from the air and checked it first. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with the jade slip, a trace of his consciousness entered it. The first jade slip recorded the sealing the heavens and sealing the earth, void concealing life. Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up. This was because he discovered that even though this secret technique did not record the method to leave, it recorded the method to enter from the outside. Moreover, this method was very detailed. They could even use specific settings to only allow a specific bloodline life form to enter, or even a specific life form. The closed-off and confidentiality could be said to be extremely strong. However, even though there was a way to enter, Zhou Zhou did not intend to withdraw the 100 soldiers he had arranged previously. He even planned to send more people over. This way, he could build something in the Myriad Illusions small world. In the future, if he really needed to settle down here, he could directly move in. The second jade slip recorded a divination technique of the Eye of the Heaven's anger. Zhou Zhou read this cultivation technique carefully and roughly understood how this cultivation technique had found the main generals of the Scarlet Divine Kingdom back then. According to the description of the Eye of the Heaven's anger, this divination technique could make one feel an existence that was disliked by the Supreme Will in an extremely vast area. Moreover, the stronger one was, the more obvious the feeling of the users of the divination technique would be. Back then, this divination technique had been used more than 10 times by a high-tier deity-level elder of the illusory life race. He had divined all the northeast regions of the High Continent. This operation had almost found all the powerful Scarlet Generals. How big was the High Continent? The Lord of all races of the myriad worlds and countless life forms fought for supremacy here, but there was never a problem of insufficient land. Therefore, even the northeast region was vaster than hundreds or thousands of heavenly worlds. However, that was it. He was still divined by the high-tier deity-level illusory life race more than 10 times. It could be seen how powerful this divination technique was. Of course, even such a powerful divination technique had a huge restriction. In order to use the Eye of the Heaven's anger, one had to possess the illusionary heavenly fate bloodline talent. Otherwise, he would not have been able to use the secret technique, the Eye of the Heaven's anger. At this thought, Zhou Zhou's gaze landed on Cab and the other members of the illusory life race as he fell into deep thought. After thinking for a while, his gaze landed on the last black gold seed. This black gold seed was about the size of a walnut. It was completely black, and dark golden patterns covered its surface. It looked mysterious and precious. A fragrance that was similar to an orange but somewhat different emanated from its body. Zhou Zhou only took a whiff and his mind became much clearer. He even dared to become much clearer about the laws of the world. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Item stats information appeared. Treasure name, Bodhi Supreme, Treasure grade, Mythical tier, Treasure effect 1, no doubts, with the Bodhi Supreme in your hand, ask the Bodhi Supreme the question in your heart. The Bodhi Supreme will give you an answer. Current number of questions answered, 1/3, prompt, after the enhancement of your scavenger talent, the current number of questions answered by the Bodhi Supreme has increased to 2/3, Treasure effect 2, Bodhi comprehension, with the Bodhi Supreme in your hand, your comprehension will increase greatly. Treasure description, a mythical tier treasure personally created by the Supreme Will. It can resolve all the doubts in the world. Zhou Zhou's expression turned solemn. Was this the Bodhi Supreme? It turned out that apart from being omnipotent, it could also help people improve their comprehension. What surprised Zhou Zhou the most was his green bronze tier Lord talent, Scavenger, was actually useful against a mythical tier treasure like Bodhi Supreme. One had to know that Zhou Zhou had only seen such a mythical tier treasure like the Lord Talent Promotion Origin Crystals obtained during the Novice Lord test. That Origin Crystal made Zhou Zhou's legendary tier Lord Talent, 100% drop rate, become a mythical tier Lord Talent, King of Loots. As a treasure of the same level, this Bodhi Supreme could actually be enhanced by the green bronze tier Lord Talent. This was as ridiculous as the pedals of a bicycle running as fast as a high-speed rail. I'll upgrade my scavenger talent later. Maybe it can be used a few more times. Zhou thought. King of the Blazing Sun. Can you promise me one more thing? I can give you some more benefits. At this moment, seeing that Zhou had finished checking the goods, Long spoke again. What benefits? Zhou immediately asked. Long could not help but laugh. This guy didn't even ask what was going on and directly asked for benefits. It's nothing. I just hope that you can take good care of the members of the illusory life race. Long said. Chapter 650 Absorbing the Illusory Fate Race Bloodline. What the hell do you mean? You're the one who ate the illusory life race, and want me to take care of the illusory life race? Let me tell you a story. Long said. I don't want to hear it. Zhou said calmly. Long. Why don't you play by the rules? Long sighed and started talking to himself. Once upon a time, there was a clan chief. He and his people were trapped in a world where they would die if they didn't get out. They tried everything to leave this world, but they couldn't. At this moment, an opportunity to answer any doubts has fallen into the hands of this patriarch. So he asked him how to solve the current predicament. The other party told him that if his illusory life race bloodline reached the level of a god spirit, he could rely on his bloodline talent to find a way to resolve his predicament. The other party even thoughtfully gave him a secret technique called blood seal. As long as this patriarch devoured the bloodline of his own race, he would be able to continuously increase the grade of his bloodline. The patriarch suffered when he learned the method. But after a long period of conflicted thoughts, he decided to use this method. Because he knows that if he doesn't use this method, all of his clansmen will die in this world. However, if he uses it, he might become a devil in the eyes of his clansmen. At the very least, his clansmen will have a chance to escape from the prison in the future and live. Let me ask you. What would you have done if you'd faced that predicament? Long asked him. Zhou said nothing. This question was really difficult to answer. Long laughed self-deprecatingly before Zhou could reply. I don't mean to wash my sins away by telling this story. Because I did become the devil after all. He waved his right hand, and another jade slip appeared in his hand. This isn't the blood seal. It's a method that I've developed over the past thousands of years with my bloodline talent, the world-breaking divine spike. I specially researched it for the sealing the heavens, sealing the earth, and void life concealing technique. Even though it still can't break through the sealing the heavens, sealing the earth, and void life concealing technique. However, it shouldn't be a problem to break through the spatial lockdown below high-tier deity level such as time lockdown, illusion lockdown, energy lockdown, matter lockdown, and fate lockdown. As for the blood seal, it shouldn't have appeared in this world. That's why I'm not giving it to you. Long said in a low voice. Zhou naturally did not object. He did not need the blood seal spell. As the owner of the King of Loots and the Chaos Human bloodline, he was born with the strongest means to obtain bloodlines and devour to evolve bloodlines. Naturally, he did not need the inferior blood restriction secret technique. Sure. I promise you. Zhou said. Then, he took the jade slip. He looked over. It indeed recorded the secret technique, world-breaking divine spike. Moreover, it was a high-tier deity-level intermediate-grade secret technique. Even though Zhou had many methods now, such methods to break through the blockade were indeed very rare. These secret techniques could make up for his shortcomings. At this moment, he suddenly felt something and his gaze shifted from the jade slip to Long. He stood quietly in front of the external simulation and looked at the sea outside without moving. The already weak life aura on his body had completely disappeared. He was dead. Zhou Zhou looked at him. He had nothing to comment on this special illusory life race. Just as he said. No matter what his original intention was, he did it. Since he had made this choice, he had to bear the consequences of it. They were either praises or infamy. As for whether it was right or wrong, he would leave it to future generations to evaluate. He walked up to him and placed his hand on his shoulder. Then, he extracted the loots. The next second, his corpse suddenly turned into countless loot and flew into Zhou Zhou's king's treasure box. Seeing this, Zhou Zhou began to check the loot he had obtained from the king's treasure box. Heaven Sealing Void Life Concealment Technique. Quicksand Divination Technique. Eye of the Heavens Anger. Spirit Forbidden Secret Technique. World-Breaking Divine Spike. Blood Seal. All kinds of loots appeared in the king's treasure box. Long was the former leader of the illusory life race after all. He had many skills, especially divination skills. However, Zhou Zhou was not interested in these loots. He even sealed it without looking at it when he saw the secret technique, Blood Seal. However, his eyes lit up when he saw one loot. It was a heart covered in an illusory white fog. Zhou Zhou looked at it. A text notification appeared. Bloodline name, Illusory Fate Race Bloodline, Bloodline level, Legendary Tier Advanced Grade, Bloodline effect. After absorbing it, the user can obtain the bloodline of the Phantom Fate race. After fusing with this bloodline, the user will gradually awaken the bloodline ability of the Phantom Fate race during their growth. Prompt: fuse 100 sets of Legendary Tier Advanced Grade, Illusory Life Race Bloodline and you can obtain 1 Low-Tier Deity Advanced Grade, Illusory Life Race Bloodline. After absorbing the bloodline of this Illusory Fate race, I can also master the Illusionary Heavenly Fate Bloodline talent. Zhou Zhou looked at the bloodline and thought to himself. Then, he took it out of the king's treasure box and chose to absorb it without hesitation. A faint warmth appeared in Zhou Zhou's heart. At the same time, Zhou Zhou realized that his mind was clearer. At the same time, he had an inexplicable sense of the surrounding world. It's a little like a sixth sense, but I feel that it's even more mysterious than my sixth sense, Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. At this moment, the text notification of absorbing the bloodline finally appeared. You have absorbed one portion of the Illusory Fate race, Legendary Tier Advanced Grade. You have absorbed one portion of the 10,000 Gu King race, Legendary Tier Advanced Grade. Your 6 senses have been slightly strengthened. You have awakened the Legendary Tier Advanced Grade Illusory Fate race talent, Illusionary Heavenly Fate. You have awakened the Legendary Tier Advanced Grade Illusory Fate race talent, Destiny Perception. You have awakened the Legendary Tier Advanced Grade Illusory Fate race talent, Mental Divination. You have grasped the Illusory Fate race's common sense inheritance. You have grasped the secret inheritance of the Illusory Fate race. Zhou Zhou looked at the awakened bloodline talents. Race talent name, Illusionary Heavenly Fate, talent level, Legendary Tier Advanced Grade, talent description. As a member of the Illusory Life race, you can deduce and divine the future you want to know by consuming your life force or even your fortune. The smaller the impact the future deduced had on him and the world, the lower the consumption of his deduction and divination. The greater the impact the future deduced had on him and the world, the greater the consumption of his deduction and divination. Sometimes, he even had to deduce with all his fortune before he could deduce and divinate. Race talent name, Fate Perception, talent level, Legendary Tier Advanced Grade, talent description. You have a certain talent in the law of fate. Sometimes, you will develop a specific vague perception of the fate of the myriad existences in the world. Race talent name, Mental Divination, talent level, Legendary Tier Advanced Grade, talent description. The Illusory Life race is a natural divination race. They don't even need to use their bloodline talent to deduce some simple future divinations. They can deduce the results through mental divination. Zhou Zhou looked at the bloodline notifications thoughtfully. Chapter 651 Talent like a double-edged sword. There was naturally no need to mention the illusory fate race's common sense inheritance and the illusory fate race's secret inheritance. They were all used to increase Zhou Zhou's foundation. The talent of the illusionary heavenly fate surprised Zhou Zhou. Using it actually consumed one's life force or even fortune. Vitality was nothing. As a chaos human, Zhou Zhou's greatest strength was his vitality. His vitality was even stronger than some god-tier bloodlines that focused on the law of life talent. However, fortune was not something that could not be casually consumed. This thing was simply his future. There was a saying, someone's fortune is over. There's not much good life left. It referred to such fortunes. It could be seen how important fortune was. Zhou Zhou naturally cherished his own fortune. He could clearly feel it now. His fortune was quite strong. Even the luck of the emperors in ancient China did not even have 0.001% of his current fortunes. But even so, Zhou Zhou was unwilling to exhaust even a little of his fortune. What if what he lacked in the end was this bit of fortune when he fought for the position of the Lord of all races in the future? At the thought of this, Zhou Zhou secretly decided. Unless he had no choice, otherwise, when he used the illusionary heavenly fate, he would only deduce and divine things that consumed his life force. At the thought of this, Zhou Zhou suddenly thought of something else. Back then, the high-tier deity levels of the illusory life race must have consumed a terrifying fate in order to deduce the main Scarlet Generals of the Hidden Battle Axe Scarlet Divine Kingdom. According to the common sense inheritance given to me by the illusory life race. Back then, after the illusory life race deduced the location of the Scarlet General, 2 high-tier deities, 4 mid-tier deities, and 6 low-tier deities died in the race. Back then, the illusory life race, which was considered a relatively famous high-level bloodline race, suffered a huge blow because of this deduction. They had no choice but to publicize that map and let the other high-level races take a share of the loot. Even though I still obtained the final event reward of the Supreme Will in the end, I was forced to hide for 10,000 years. The fact that the illusory life race is trapped in the myriad illusions small world and is on the verge of extinction might be related to the divination back then that almost exhausted the luck of the illusory life race. The more Zhou Zhou thought about it, the more he felt that this divination technique was a double-edged sword. It was used well. To be able to stand out from the myriad races and even obtain the final event reward of the supreme event. It was not used well. Not only would he die, but he might even cause his race to be on the verge of extermination. The god spirits of the illusory fate race back then might have also expected this. However, they chose to gamble. As for the outcome of the bet, Zhou Zhou shook his head. It was very difficult for him to make an evaluation. He shook his head and laughed. This was a matter of the illusory life race. Why was he thinking so much? He looked at the other 2 bloodline talents. Fate perception was also a good bloodline talent. It could actually allow him to have a certain talent in the law of fate. The law of fate was one of the top laws among the many laws of the supreme will. As for the mental divination technique, it was also a good bloodline talent. At least in the future, whoever lost something, such as keys, missed cores, or other small items. There was no need to trouble yourself to look for it. He calculated in his heart and found it. Now that I've mastered divination and the law of fate talent, the abilities in my body are getting more and more mixed: lightning law talent, spatial law talent, fate law talent, bloodline path, blood law talent, light law talent. What kind of path will I walk in the future? What kind of nomological talent will I use to achieve my God spirit path? Zhou Zhou looked even more confused. He was a little happy and vexed. It was not good to master too many abilities and talents. For those with limited abilities and talent, at his current level, he would probably be very clear what kind of God spirit path he would walk in the future. There was no other path to take after all. Honorable Supreme Will, what law path should I take to become an achievement God spirit? Zhou Zhou asked casually. He had asked this question before. However, the Supreme Will did not make a reply. Occasionally, he would say, "The path of the law is on you." But wasn't this obvious? Ask the Bodhi Supreme. He will help you solve your problem. At this moment, a notification from the Supreme Will appeared in front of Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou was stunned. There was actually a different reply. However, when he saw the answer of the Supreme Will, joy immediately appeared on his face. Can the Bodhi Supreme really help me solve my problem? Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. He had actually wanted to ask this question when he obtained the Bodhi Supreme. However, he was not too confident. Now that he had the answer of the Supreme Will, he felt much more confident. I'll ask Bodhi Supreme tonight. Zhou Zhou thought to himself. As for now, he had to let his soldiers continue doing faction quests. After that, Zhou Zhou did not stay any longer and returned to the back Blazing Sun Kingdom through the Black Iron Tier territory. In the future, he planned to occupy a few more territories here. This way, even if this Black Iron Tier territory was captured, there were at least other territories that he could teleport over. As for directly building a territory and teleportation array in the Myriad Illusions small world, it sounded beautiful, but that would not work. This was because the heaven-sealing void life concealment technique of the illusory life race had already completely blocked the internal and external space of the Myriad Illusions small world. The spatial teleportation array could not produce an effect at all. Even Zhou Zhou's yellow gold tier return to the city could not pass through the heaven-sealing void life concealment technique. Unless Zhou Zhou could raise it to a higher level. However, Zhou Zhou did not have so many white platinum tier Lord Talent crystal fragments in his hands now. He could not upgrade to return to the city for the time being. He could only wait until he gathered enough resources. Blazing Sun Kingdom. After Zhou Zhou returned to the capital of the Blazing Sun, he immediately used the spatial teleportation array to arrive at the Night Empire. He then teleported to the latest epic tier spatial teleportation array that they had captured yesterday. The soldiers of the Night Empire who were guarding this spatial teleportation array were very polite to Zhou Zhou and the others. After asking if he wanted to rest, Zhou Zhou tactfully refused. Then, he led the soldiers onto the Starry Night and flew to the next destination, a legendary tier advanced grade spatial teleportation array. More than 6 hours later, after occupying 4 extraordinary tier advanced grade spatial teleportation arrays and 2 epic tier advanced grade spatial teleportation arrays, Zhou Zhou successfully underwent 2 insight defections in the Scarlet Garrison of the 2 epic tier advanced grade spatial teleportation arrays. A total of more than 10 million Scarlet Garrisons gave him 2,561,636 Scarlet Monsters for insight defection. Chapter 652 Military Industry Lord's request. After the insight defection was completed, Zhou Zhou left a blood bat avatar for Bai Yun and the others as usual. Then, he let them conquer the other spatial teleportation arrays themselves while he returned to the Blazing Sun Kingdom alone. In a study room in the advanced grade Lord's Paradise of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, Zhou Zhou returned and was about to upgrade the green bronze tier Lord Talent, Scavenger, when he suddenly realized that the message interface had flashed. He opened it and realized that it was a message from the Military Industry Lord. He looked over curiously. Military Industry Lord, Your Majesty, why haven't you bought the weapons from our Military Industry Alliance recently? We have recently developed many new Cerulean planet weapons. Our weapon developer even added some inspiration for the design of Machina race weapons in the High Continent. Their lethality is much stronger than when they were on the Cerulean planet. Zhou Zhou scratched his head. Cerulean planet weapons. He had indeed bought some firearms and weapons from the military industry lord. However, at that time, the military industry lord could only develop some firearms from the First World War. Even though they were considered strong and could reach the standard of bronze and silver arms, as the strength of his soldiers increased rapidly, these weapons gradually could not match the strength of the soldiers. In addition, his ultimate lord, Zhou Zhou, had obtained the loots of the Machina race's Lord Father. He had grasped high-level war technology manufacturing blueprints of the Machina race, such as the Invisible Ghost, the Shield of Light, the Soul Residence, the Giant Axe Ripper, and the Suicide Bomb Beetles. Therefore, he had long stopped using those primitive and backward First World War weapons. Lord of the Blazing Sun, I forgot to buy weapons from you recently because I have new weapons channels. Zhou Zhou replied truthfully. Military Industry City Territory. When the military industry lord saw the Lord of the Blazing Sun's answer, he could not help but smile bitterly. That's true. With His Majesty's strength, it would be strange if he still takes a fancy to our weapons back then. I wonder if my current bargaining chip can move him, the military industry lord muttered to himself. Then, he looked out of the territory at the fatigue, panic, and confusion on the faces of the subjects. His eyes gradually became firm. Not every lord of the cerulean planet was as heaven-defying as Zhou Zhou. Not only could he do the top-notch faction quests in this King of 10,000 Kings event, he even had time to conquer an intermediate kingdom. Most of the cerulean planet lords, even top-notch lords like the military industry lord, were deep in the mire of the King of 10,000 Kings activities and struggling. The pressure brought to them by the large-scale offensive of the Scarlet faction was too terrifying after all. There were really as many Diamond Tier Extraordinary Tier experts as there were dogs. Epic Tier Legendary Tier experts were everywhere. Even Scarlet God spirits began to appear. It was very difficult for them to resist such a Scarlet faction with the forces they had developed so far. It was very difficult for them to resist such a Scarlet faction with the forces they had developed so far. No wonder the Supreme will ask the lords of all races to join the Kingdom or Empire faction to assist these local factions in resisting the invasion of the endless Scarlet factions. Instead of letting the lords of all races fight head-on. With this difference in strength, wouldn't a head-on confrontation be pure sending him to his death? In this war situation, even top lords like the Military Industry Lord, the Dragon Lady Lord, and the Undead Lord had a hard time surviving. Only Cerulean Planet lords with legendary tier lord talents like the Overlord Lord, the Dragon God Lord, and the Insect Lord could barely live better. However, it was not much better. They did not even dare to hope to obtain a high ranking in their faction now. Being able to live through this King of 10,000 Kings event unscathed was their greatest wish. The Military Industry Lord did not think too much about it and typed to Zhou Zhou again. Military Industry Lord, Your Majesty of the Blazing Sun, I want to make a request of you on behalf of the entire Military Industry Alliance. Lord of the Blazing Sun, you don't have to be so polite. We're old friends. If you have anything to say, just say it. Zhou Zhou had a good impression of the few lords who could work with him among the Cerulean Planet lords. In addition, this guy was the only lord without a lord talent among the lords of the Cerulean Planet. Zhou Zhou admired him. Military Industry Lord, I want to buy an extraordinary tier elementary grade kingdom token from you. Zhou Zhou raised his eyebrows. Then, he typed, Lord of the Blazing Sun, you want to build a kingdom? The conditions to build a kingdom are very difficult to achieve. Military Industry Lord, we can already satisfy the other two conditions other than the extraordinary tier elementary grade kingdom token. Zhou Zhou was really surprised when he saw his reply. Even he had spent a considerable amount of time and effort to gather the three conditions to establish a kingdom. He was not an arrogant person. However, he could not help but feel that it was very difficult for a second Cerulean Planet Lord to have his talent, opportunity, and strength to gather these three conditions to establish a kingdom in a short period of time to build a second Cerulean Planet Lord's kingdom other than his. The military industry lord actually said that he was only lacking an extraordinary tier elementary grade kingdom token to gather all the conditions to establish a kingdom. How could he not be surprised? Zhou Zhou asked without thinking too much. Lord of the Blazing Sun, how did you satisfy the other two conditions? Military industry lord, sigh, isn't it because of this King of 10,000 Kings event, or rather, the Tribulation of All Races event? Military industry lord, am a little embarrassed to say this. In some ways, we have to thank the King of 10,000 Kings for this event. Military industry lord, if not for this tribulation of all races, there wouldn't be so many kingdom-level factions scattered by the Scarlet faction, and so many experts and resources wouldn't have fallen into the hands of low-level lord factions like us. Military industry lord, Your Majesty, you're right. The reason why we have gathered the other two conditions to establish a kingdom is because we obtained the remains of those kingdom-level forces that have already been destroyed. Military industry lord, after the kingdom was destroyed, the descendants of these kingdom-level lord forces brought a portion of the resources accumulated by their kingdom to wander the high continent. Military industry lord, I saw the opportunity and found these descendants. After accepting them and discussing it, they said that they are willing to use the resources they have as a bargaining chip to unite our Cerulean Planet Lord to build a Federation kingdom governed equally by our Cerulean Planet Lord and them. Military industry lord, this way, they can also restore their country and we can step into the kingdom-level lord faction in advance. Military industry lord, this Tribulation of All Races event really lives up to its name. I'll be honest with His Majesty. Even though I'm now one of the top lords on the Cerulean planet, I'm not confident that I can last until the end of this Tribulation of All Races event. Military industry lord, I agreed for the sake of my subjects and my future. Chapter 653 Zhou Zhou's Condition. The confused military industry lord. When the military industry lord mentioned discussing this matter, his face turned slightly red. In fact, the descendants of kingdoms who had the resources of kingdoms or even heroes had originally wanted to dominate the federal countries in the beginning. Facing this situation, the military industry lord and the others did not think of a way to deal with it at first. Even in search of survival, some of the higher-ups of the alliance even suggested that they might as well obey their suggestion and compromise for the time being. In any case, who could say for sure what would happen in the future? But at this moment, a higher-up of the military industry alliance suddenly had an idea and asked if he should pull the banner of the Lord of the Blazing Sun to boost their confidence. Even if he did not convince the other party in the end, he might be able to fight for more benefits and rights. With the intention of giving it a try, they told them in the next meeting that the Lord of the Blazing Sun was of the same race. They even thickened their skin and said that His Majesty the Blazing Sun was actually their backer. In the end, they were stunned. After hearing that the Lord of the Blazing Sun was their race and backer, the attitude of these descendants of the kingdom, who were originally quite arrogant, actually changed drastically. They were even willing to treat him as an equal. Only then did the military industry lord and the others realize that the Lord of the Blazing Sun from the Cerulean planet actually had such an astonishing reputation and status in the eyes of the life forms of the high continent, especially the human life forms. Lords of the Cerulean planet were already smug that they had some initial acquaintance diplomacy with kingdom-level forces. He did not know that the Lord of the Blazing Sun had already achieved such a high reputation status outside. On the other side, Zhou Zhou cursed in his heart when he heard the military industry lord's words. He had to admit that he was jealous. It was so easy to obtain the resources and heroes to build a kingdom. In comparison, his act of building a kingdom with his own hands was simply a model among the lords. However, when he thought about how the military industry lord would not receive any good rewards even if he built a kingdom as the first person to eat the benefits of establishing a kingdom-level lord faction, he felt much better. He had to give others some soup, right? Zhou Zhou reminded himself and gradually calmed down and began to think about how much benefits this matter would bring him. He now had 5 kingdom tokens. Among them, he would use the epic tier elementary grade kingdom token of the Ice Demon Kingdom to build an intermediate kingdom in the future. The other 4 kingdom tokens came from the 4 beginner kingdoms, Aurora Kingdom, Original Taian, Original Titan, and Original Netherbark. He could sell one to the other party. In any case, there was no point in keeping it. As for using the additional kingdom token to build an additional kingdom as his subsidiary kingdom, this was not beneficial to him at all. If he had the time and energy, he might as well focus on developing the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Zhou thought for a moment and typed, "Lord of the Blazing Sun, I can sell you a kingdom token, but what can you give me?" After Zhou sent it, he waited for a long time before the other party sent a message. Military Industry Lord, what does His Majesty want? Lord of the Blazing Sun, what do you have? Military Industry Lord, we have recently figured out a portion of the manufacturing process for nuclear-level arms. After appraising it, we realized that it has the destructive power of a low-tier deity. I wonder if Your Majesty needs it. The Military Industry Lord was a little helpless when he raised this condition. This was originally their greatest trump card. However, the industrial foundation needed to make a nuclear weapon was too much and too broad. Coupled with the current situation, he could only use it as a bargaining chip, hoping that the other party would take a fancy to it. Zhou was a little surprised. He actually created arms of that level so quickly. Zhou thought for a moment and typed, Lord of the Blazing Sun, not enough. Lord of the Blazing Sun, what you're talking about is just a half-finished product. It's not even a half-finished product. It's just a production method. Its production requires very professional talents. I don't have anyone in this field. I can't make it even if you give it to me. I can, but this alone isn't enough. Zhou had the ultimate lord, Zhou, Wuxia, and a series of robot armies. After obtaining the production method and gathering enough materials, there was a high chance of making nuclear weapons. However, he naturally could not expose his background so easily. He would bargain first. Military Industry Lord, I knew His Majesty wouldn't fancy such things. There's another benefit. After the Holy Army Kingdom is established, our Holy Army Kingdom and the Cerulean Planet Lord of the Military Industry Alliance under my command will follow His Majesty the Blazing Sun's lead in the future. Military Industry Lord, if Your Majesty needs any Cerulean Planet technology arms, we can provide complete and detailed manufacturing blueprints and corresponding military manufacturing talents for free. Military Industry Lord, we can also become His Majesty's substitute factory. If His Majesty needs orders for Cerulean Planet arms, we can provide arms manufacturing and later maintenance services to His Majesty at an absolute cost price. Military Industry Lord, in addition, if you encounter the Lord's territory of our Military Industry Alliance during the development of your territory, the Lord of our Military Industry Alliance can directly give up his status as a Lord and offer the territory to you with both hands. Zhou raised his eyebrows. This Military Industry Lord was really willing to spend a lot of money. Lord of the Blazing Sun, can you make decisions for those two sides? Military Industry Lord, I have to make a decision even if you can't. Now is not the time to be willful. Zhou was silent. It seemed that the Military Industry Alliance was really not in a good situation. Still. Lord of the Blazing Sun, it's still not enough. The Military Industry Lord originally thought that his sacrifice was great enough, but when he saw Zhou's reply, he could not help but feel angry no matter how good his temper was. Wasn't His Majesty of the Blazing Sun going too far? He had already given him everything he could, but this Emperor of the Blazing Sun was still not satisfied. He already had the thought of retreating. He no longer had any other assets after all. However, at most, he would discuss with the other top Cerulean Planet Lords and see if they could join forces. Even though the other Cerulean Planet Lords were not doing well either, it was very difficult for them to support each other even if they joined forces. However, it was still a path that could be tried. At this moment, The Lord of the Blazing Sun sent another message. Lord of the Blazing Sun, you came to ask me for the kingdom token. The descendant of that kingdom should have lost the kingdom token, right? Lord of the Blazing Sun, you've already sacrificed so much. Why don't you let the other party pay a little too? Lord of the Blazing Sun, tell the descendants of that kingdom that if you want to exchange for the kingdom token in my hands, you can take out 1/3 of the country's wealth. This way, I will hand over my kingdom token with both hands. Military Industry City. The military industry lord looked at the text sent by Zhou Zhou in shock. There was only one thought left in his mind. Why was his appetite so big? 1/3 of the kingdom's wealth? How could he think of that? The military industry lord's expression was gloomy for a long time. Then, he replied, let me try asking. Then, he went to contact the descendants of the kingdom. A moment later, the military industry lord walked out of a temporary palace in a daze. Because, facing the harsh conditions given by the Lord of the Blazing Sun, that descendant of the kingdom actually agreed after only thinking for a moment. And he looked very excited. What was going on? Could it be that the king of the Blazing Sun had eaten the fruit of his pride? He actually agreed to such a huge matter so easily. At this moment, the military industry lord felt that his worldview had been overturned. Chapter 654 Yellow Gold Tier Lord Talent, Trashman. The military industry lord told Zhou Zhou this result in a daze. Zhou Zhou was also quite surprised. Lord of the Blazing Sun, is the descendant of that kingdom a man or a woman? Military industry lord, male. The military industry lord replied subconsciously. Zhou Zhou nodded inwardly when he saw the reply. Zhou Zhou nodded inwardly when he saw the reply. It shouldn't be the same for men. Military industry lord, by the way. Military industry lord, that descendant of the kingdom also has a small request. Military industry lord, he said that he wants to visit you if there's a chance in the future. The military industry lord thought of this and hurriedly said to Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou agreed without hesitation, giving him 1/3 of the wealth of his kingdom. So what if they met? If every descendant of a wandering kingdom had such an awareness, he was willing to meet them every day. Then, Zhou Zhou and the military industry lord chatted about some specific matters about this matter. As there was more to talk about, the two of them simply turned on the voice chat. In terms of the content of the conversation, for example, the descendant of that kingdom was from a descendant called the Holy Roman Kingdom, Estin. The Holy Army Kingdom, that the military industry lord had mentioned just now was the name of the future federal kingdom that he and Estin had discussed. Other than that, they also chatted about the specific division of power between the military industry alliance and the Estin faction. Due to the Emperor Heart's skill, Zhou Zhou had the inheritance of many emperors' ways of handling matters. Therefore, he had a deep understanding of the Federation Kingdom mentioned by the military industry lord. Therefore, during the conversation, Zhou Zhou pointed out many mistakes in the military industry lord's words and easily provided many solutions. He even mentioned many examples. When the military industry lord heard Zhou Zhou's persuasive theory, he was so shocked that he was speechless. Your Majesty, may I ask what your background was before you came to the high continent? Normal working class. Huh. The military industry lord's mouth was wide open in disbelief. Are you kidding me? Working class? How can the working class have your knowledge? Based on your comments and opinions just now, the military industry lord even suspected that the other party had transmigrated from the previous emperor era. Otherwise, why would there be so many practical theories that could empathize with him? However, seeing that Zhou Zhou had no intention of explaining further, the military industry lord was smart enough not to ask further. A moment later, their conversation came to an end. The military industry lord looked unsatisfied. Zhou Zhou was a little impatient. Why was this military industry lord like a block of wood? His brain was all focused on technology. Zhou Zhou said, "Let's talk next time," and hung up. Unexpectedly, the other party sent another message. Military Industry Lord, Your Majesty, I want to ask you about establishing a kingdom. Before looking for you, I had discussed it with other top lords, including the Overlord Lord, the Dragon Lady Lord, the Undead Lord, and other lords. Military Industry Lord, they actually have the idea of building a kingdom. I wonder if you, perhaps it was because he had admitted that Zhou Zhou was his direct superior. The Military Industry Lord's tone became cautious. When Zhou Zhou saw the message, he immediately understood what the other party meant. He casually typed a reply, "Lord of the Blazing Sun, you decide what to say and what not to say. However, if they really want to exchange for the kingdom token in my hands, fine. Bring at least the value you just paid and come find me. Lord of the Blazing Sun, I have limited kingdom tokens. First come, first served." Military Industry Lord, "Yes, Your Majesty." The Military Industry Lord could not help but click his tongue. It seemed that His Majesty was going to make a killing this time. For some reason, he actually felt a little happy. If these top-notch lords wanted to survive this event, they had to build a kingdom and use the power and resources of the kingdom to coordinate all the forces that could be used. Therefore, they had to buy His Majesty's kingdom token even if they wanted to. He thought of something interesting. The Military Industry Lord smiled. On the other side, Zhou Zhou did not pay much attention to it after closing the chat interface. Even though the Dragon Lady Lord was once a competitor he valued and he was weak, the difference between the two sides could be said to be worlds apart. Zhou Zhou no longer minded what had happened back then. Then, he took out 10 white Silver-Tier Lord Talent Crystal Fragments and fused them into a white Silver-Tier Lord Talent Origin Divine Crystals to upgrade the Scavenger to a white Silver-Tier Lord Talent. Lord Talent, Scavenger, White Silver-Tier, Scavenger. As an old scavenger, you already have an almost innate intuition towards the treasures within a radius of 10,000 meters around you. You can acutely sense the location of the treasures. At the same time, the treasures you have collected can be used for twice the time if they have characteristics such as time limit or endurance. When you extract the loot from the corpse, the drop rate will increase by an additional 10%. Zhou Zhou, he had a toothache. The effect of this upgraded Lord Talent had indeed increased. Whether it was the increase in the range from 1,000 meters to 10,000 meters or the increase in the drop rate from 5% to 10%, it was a huge increase for others. But to Zhou Zhou, what he wanted the most was an increase in time use. He looked at his Lord Talent fragment storage and realized that it could still be upgraded to yellow gold tier. However, he could not continue charging at the white platinum tier. There was no hesitation. Zhou Zhou used another 10 yellow gold tier Lord Talent Crystal Fragments to fuse into a yellow gold tier Lord Talent Origin Divine Crystals and upgrade the Scavenger to the yellow gold tier. Lord Talent, Trash Man, yellow gold tier, Scavenger, you are the leader of the Scavengers, a famous trash man. You, who is quite talented in picking up trash, already have an almost innate intuition towards the treasures within a 100-kilometer radius of you. You can acutely sense the location of the treasures. At the same time, if the treasure you collected has characteristics such as time limit or endurance, you can use your rich experience to find a way to extend the usage of this treasure. It can be extended by up to 3 times. When you extract the loot from the corpse, the drop rate will increase by an additional 15%. Zhou Zhou raised his eyebrows. The Scavenger had been upgraded to Trash Man. Is this considered an upgrade? Zhou Zhou shook his head. He looked at the upgraded Lord Talent and smiled. He had finally upgraded to what he needed. Another increase, the range of perception had increased from 10,000 meters to 100 kilometers. It was also 10 times stronger. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. As for the final 15% drop rate, it could basically be ignored. He immediately took out the Bodhi Supreme. As he watched, a text notification gradually appeared in front of him. Trash Man Talent Hint: as an experienced trash man, you vaguely feel that this seed-like treasure seems to have a life of its own and is constantly emitting a rich desire for knowledge. The desire for knowledge? Zhou raised his eyebrows. Chapter 655 Use Dispelling Questions. Wuxia. Zhou suddenly said. Wuxia is here, Your Majesty. Wuxia's gentle voice appeared in the room. Take out the bloodline inheritances I recorded previously. He said. Yes, Your Majesty. After Wuxia finished speaking, a large number of virtual texts slowly appeared around Zhou. All kinds of bloodline inheritances were recorded on these virtual texts as if they were free. Zhou did not notice this. His gaze had been on the Bodhi Supreme in his hand. The next second, under Zhou's surprised gaze, the Bodhi Supreme that had been motionless suddenly moved slightly after these bloodline inheritances appeared. Then, it floated in the air. Wisps of golden light emitted from the golden patterns on its surface, looking mysterious, dazzling, and eye-catching. This light landed on the virtual text. With every virtual text that recorded the bloodline inheritance, the golden light on the surface of the Bodhi Supreme became brighter. At the same time, the virtual text that was scanned disappeared, as if it had been absorbed by the Bodhi Supreme. Zhou did not care. It was just a replicated virtual text. Wuxia could make as many of these things as she wanted. After these virtual texts were absorbed by the Bodhi Supreme, the light on his body gradually dimmed. Zhou said without hesitation, next batch. A new batch of virtual texts recording the bloodline inheritance appeared in the air around Zhou. Seeing this, the Bodhi Supreme was like a child who had seen delicious snacks. The light on his body immediately lit up again. Then, he began to absorb these bloodline inheritances again. After 7 to 8 such experiences, the bloodline inheritance that Zhou had recorded was finally absorbed by Bodhi Supreme. He looked at Bodhi Supreme. He did not know if it was an illusion, but he could actually feel that it was not done yet. Don't be anxious. Tomorrow, I'll continue to engrave the bloodline inheritance and let you eat your fill. Zhou comforted him as he was secretly shocked by this fellow's bottomless pit. He felt that the other party was like a big rice bucket. The Bodhi Supreme floating in the air seemed to have a life of its own. It moved slightly when it heard Zhou's words before landing in his hand again. Zhou looked over expectantly. Treasure name, Bodhi Supreme, treasure grade, mythical tier, treasure effect 1, no doubts. With the Bodhi Supreme in your hand, ask the Bodhi Supreme the question in your heart. The Bodhi Supreme will give you an answer. Current number of questions answered, 1/3, prompt 1. After the enhancement of your scavenger talent, the current number of questions answered by the Bodhi Supreme has increased to 2/3, prompt 2. The Bodhi Supreme is satisfied with your feeding and is willing to answer an ordinary question for you. Current number of normal questions answered, 1/1. Treasure effect 2, Bodhi Heart. With the Bodhi Supreme in your hand, your comprehension ability will increase greatly. Treasure description, a mythical tier treasure personally created by the Supreme Will. It can resolve all the doubts in the world. Zhou looked a little excited when he saw the update on the treasure. Not bad, not bad. Even though it only increased the number of normal questions, however, at the very least, it proved that his trashy Lord talent provided him with a feasible method to increase the use duration. Moreover, who knew what kind of range of problems the normal problems in the eyes of the Bodhi Supreme covered? The opportunity to answer this normal question was definitely quite precious. Use this method to increase the number of times Bodhi Supreme can be used. I'm afraid only I and the other high-level bloodline races with a large amount of bloodline inheritance can do it. Zhou came back to his senses and was secretly rejoicing. He did not expect this either. His bloodline inheritance could actually be useful in this aspect. He thought for a moment and decided to use the normal question first to see the specific effect. In any case, there were still many bloodline inheritances in his mind. This ordinary question was not a big deal. He held the Bodhi Supreme in his hand and was about to ask something when a lazy voice that sounded like a man and a woman sounded. "Human, what question do you want to ask?" This was the Bodhi Supreme. Zhou was surprised. Even though he had previously learned that the Bodhi Supreme had his own wisdom will through the illusory life race and had even made an agreement with Patriarch Luo back then, however, this was the first time he had come into contact with the intelligence will that was born from the treasure. "I want to ask, what's the difference between normal questions and answering questions?" Zhou did not waste his breath and asked in his heart. Normal problems are just some not-so-secret problems. Even though these normal questions do not involve the most secret of secrets of the myriad worlds, they will still be answers that some high-level bloodline races have been pursuing bitterly but can't obtain. As for answering questions, its scope is huge. Basically, as long as there are questions in the myriad worlds and there are answers to them, I can answer almost all of them for you. Not only that, but if there's a need, it'll also give the inquirer some benefits that can assist in clearing his doubts. For example, when I was answering an illusory fate race member's doubts previously, that illusory fate race member asked me if I could resolve its predicament. After answering his questions, I gave him a set of blood seal technique. Almost. Zhou acutely sensed this word. Ayaya, you discovered me. Of course, in the current world, I basically know everything. However, I was created by the Supreme Will after all. As you cerulean planet people or Earthlings have said, Bodhi has no choice in the pugilistic world. If the Supreme Will doesn't want me to reveal some secrets, I can only choose not to. As the Bodhi Supreme spoke, he sounded helpless as if his talent had been delayed by the Supreme Will. It sounded like he deserved a beating. Zhou nodded on the surface. He was a little shocked. He could actually tell at a glance that I was a transmigrator. As expected of the omniscient Bodhi Supreme. Moreover, from the other party's calm tone, were transmigrators not rare in this world? Zhou instantly thought of many things. He pondered for a long time before coming back to his senses. He looked at the Bodhi Supreme in his hand and said seriously, "Sorry for the inconvenience." "Thank you very much. Bodhi Supreme, I want to use that opportunity to clear my doubts." "Ask away." Bodhi Supreme said lazily. "May I ask what path of laws I should use to become a god spirit in the future?" "You don't know." "Should I know?" "It's on you." "You actually don't know?" "Ha ha ha ha, you're teasing me to death." Bodhi Supreme laughed out loud, as if he had heard something extremely funny. Zhou's expression darkened. This Bodhi Supreme. His personality was really bad. But then again, this Bodhi Supreme's answer was exactly the same as the hint given to him by the Supreme Will. Chapter 656 Lord Law. Alright, I won't laugh at you anymore. Bodhi Supreme composed himself and replied leisurely. It's not your fault. It's the number one law path among the endless laws after all. Even those high-level bloodline races will find it difficult to see its appearance, let alone you. What kind of law is it? When Zhou heard the other party's words, his eyes lit up and he immediately asked. Idiot, the strongest method you've used to reach this point is also the strongest law path you have. It's naturally yours, many Lord talents. Zhou could not help but tremble. Lord talents. When he heard this word, Zhou immediately felt the fog that enveloped the path ahead disappear almost instantly. It was as if a light suddenly illuminated the future path that he had been searching for a long time but had not found. However, Zhou still had a question. Lord talent. Isn't it a personal talent? Zhou asked doubtfully. Most of the innate talents of life forms are manifestations of endless laws on life forms. It can also be said to be an ability that simplifies laws billions of times. Therefore, talent tracing back to the extreme is the law. You're very lucky. From the beginning, you became one of the few lords chosen by heaven with a complete lord talent. Even though your legendary tier lord talent, 100% drop rate back then was not the top lord talent among the many lord talents. But it is the best prerequisite for this path of laws. Especially after you upgraded it to the mythical tier, unique grade lord talent, king of loots, this prerequisite for underwent an extreme transformation. If the path to this supreme law requires talent, then you, who has this strongest prerequisite for, are the strongest talent owner. And it's foreseeable that your talent will continue to increase after you obtain more lord talents in the future. No matter how bad the Bodhi Supreme's personality was, his evaluation of Zhou Zhou's talent was quite high. Zhou Zhou was not proud. After all, talent was only a talent. It was useless no matter how talented he was if he did not become the last lord of all races. Just as an old saying went, a dead genius was not a genius. What's the name of this path of laws? Zhou Zhou asked. You can call it the Lord's Law, or the Supreme Law, the Control Law, the Control Law, the God's Law, the Original Law, there are many names. It's up to you. Bodhi Supreme said. Zhou Zhou thought for a moment. Since he targeted the Lord of all races, he would call it the Lord's Law. How should I comprehend the Lord's Law? How should I comprehend the Lord's Law? That's another problem. Bodhi Supreme said leisurely. Normal question or answer question? Zhou Zhou immediately asked. Let's see what answer you want. If it's a normal question, I can at most hint you with some methods verbally. However, if it's an answer at the enlightenment level, not only can I hint you with some methods verbally, I can also give you good things like the blood restriction and the heaven sealing void life concealment technique, allowing you to master the method to directly reach the Lord's Law. Bodhi Supreme tempted. Zhou Zhou's expression was strange. This Bodhi Supreme. Why did he look like the kind of person who wanted to tell him his secret but did not want to say it himself? Instead, he wanted others to take the initiative to ask for guidance. I want to dispel my doubts. Zhou Zhou did not think too much about it and said in a low voice. Wise choice. Bodhi Supreme praised and said, to you, you have two innate conditions to comprehend the Lord's Law. The first is to casually choose one of the large number of Lord Talent crystal fragments you have and comprehend the incomplete Lord Law that is billions of times simpler. However, this method is a little worse than the second method. The second method is to start with the Lord Talent you have and comprehend the Lord Laws within. The second method is to start with the Lord Talent you have and comprehend the Lord Laws within. However, you can't bite off more than you can chew at the beginning. You have to start comprehending from your lowest level Lord Talent. It's too complicated a Lord's Law. You won't understand it. Bodhi Supreme reminded. Zhou Zhou nodded thoughtfully. At this moment. However, Bodhi Supreme's tone changed and he said, there are billions of existences in the endless heavens who have the Lord Talent. But do you know why, after countless years, very few or even almost no experts in the myriad worlds are famous for the Lord Law? Why? Zhou Zhou also realized this problem. There were countless bloodline inheritances in his mind. However, he only realized a problem now. None of the bloodline inheritances in his mind mentioned anything about the Lord's Law. Not to mention a god spirit that had become a god with the Lord's Law. It was as if even those top-notch bloodline races did not know the existence of the Lord Law. It was unbelievable just thinking about it. That's naturally because there is an extremely high threshold to sense the Lord's Law. If you can't cross this threshold, not to mention becoming a god with the Lord's Law, even living beings with high talent can't sense the existence of the Lord's Law. You have so many Lord Talents on you, but don't you feel anything about the Lord Law? You have so many Lord Talents on you, but don't you feel anything about the Lord Law? I'll teach you a secret technique now. If you learn this secret technique, you can feel the existence of the Lord's Law. The name of this mystic technique is Supreme I. Listen carefully, then, the Bodhi Supreme explained the Supreme I mystic technique tirelessly. Zhou Zhou closed his eyes and listened to the mystic technique warned by the Bodhi Supreme. Gradually, white fog emitted from his body and condensed above his head. A moment later, a circular pure white eye floated above Zhou Zhou's head. If the Black Moon King was still alive, he would probably be able to tell at a glance that this pure white eye was the phenomenon of the world that appeared when he faced the Supreme Will. However, compared to a phenomenon of that level, at this moment, the Supreme Eye above Zhou Zhou's head was much smaller. Moreover, it did not have that supreme and terrifying heavenly might. There was no time freeze or spatial distance astronomical phenomenon. At the same time, Zhou Zhou realized that when he used this Supreme Eye, his perspective seemed to have suddenly changed from a first-person perspective to a God's perspective. Not only could he observe everything around him from 360 degrees without any blind spots, moreover, he could see things that most life forms could not. For example, Zhou Zhou moved the Supreme Eye and looked down at his body. It was as if he had X-ray vision and could see straight into his body. In his body, colorful mystical law engravings spread throughout his body. It was as if he had seen the most profound and fundamental thing in the world, making him unable to help but be addicted. He looked at these secrets of the mysterious laws. He suddenly seemed to understand something. This is the law that controls everything. This is the supreme path. This is a Lord's law. Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. Chapter 657 Black Iron Tear Lord Talent, Hand of Wealth. Zhou Zhou's gaze landed on the profound patterns on his body. These law engravings that represented the Lord's laws were many and varied. They looked very scattered, as if they were independent. However, if one looked closely, they would discover that they were actually vaguely similar in nature, but they differed in the division of labor. Zhou Zhou controlled the crowd control Supreme Eye and his gaze landed on the largest Lord Talent law engraving in his body. This Lord Nomological secret pattern was 9-colored and looked extremely noble, as if it contained a world. As soon as they came into contact, Zhou Zhou knew what the Lord's law was. It was his most powerful Lord Talent, mythical tier, one and only Lord Talent, King of Lutes. It represented the secret laws. Zhou Zhou was naturally the most confident in this Lord Talent that had followed him for the longest time. After he came into contact with it, he subconsciously went deeper and prepared to comprehend this law engraving. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. He had completely forgotten the Bodhi Supreme's reminder. A moment later, he retracted his consciousness from the King of Lutes' nomological secret engravings with a dumbfounded expression. After his consciousness entered it, he was like a child who had never gone to school and suddenly saw an academician-level scientific research paper. He didn't and could not understand it at all. Heh, I told you to start from the lowest level Lord Talent, but you didn't listen. Are you dumbfounded? Did he really think that it was so easy to comprehend an ultimate maxim? Bodhi Supreme mocked mercilessly. Zhou Zhou was so embarrassed that he did not know what to do. I was wrong. I'll comprehend the lowest level Lord Talent now. Zhou Zhou was not stubborn. He looked at the nomological patterns represented by the smallest Lord Talent. Soon, his gaze landed on a Lord Talent that was emitting a bronze glow. It was the green bronze tier Lord Talent, Beauty. It was one of his few green bronze tier Lord Talents. It was all thanks to this Lord Talent that so many refugees could come from thousands of miles away to join his territory every day. His consciousness was immersed in it. A moment later, a slight frown creased his brow. The Bodhi Supreme was right. A low-level Lord Talent was indeed easier to comprehend. Still, Zhou Zhou was so embarrassed that he did not know what to do. Even the green bronze tier Lord talent was very difficult for him to comprehend. The only thing that made Zhou happy was he had really comprehended a little of the profundity of the Lord's laws. For example, this beauty Lord talent. After a while of comprehension, he vaguely understood how this Lord talent had unknowingly improved the looks of the subjects. According to this progress, he continued to comprehend. Perhaps in another 10 days or 8 days, he could change a person's appearance without relying on his Lord talent. It could even improve one's figure and temperament in all aspects that affected one's appearance. Sensing this, Zhou looked excited. "I say. What are you so happy about?" At this moment, the Bodhi Supreme threw another merciless voiceover. Zhou opened his eyes and looked at Bodhi Supreme. Bodhi Supreme lectured again, "For the Lord talent, you're just a kid who can't even remember the numbers. Now, instead of studying the kindergarten curriculum, you're thinking of skipping grades to study the first and second grade curriculum. Don't bite off more than you can chew." Bodhi Supreme did not stand on ceremony. Zhou nodded. He wasn't angry. That was because he knew that the other party was right. With his current understanding of the Lord's law, it was indeed a little too difficult to start with the green bronze tier Lord talent. However, the black iron tier Lord talent that he had previously had long been upgraded. Since that was the case, Zhou flipped his right hand and took out 10 black iron tier Lord talent crystal fragments. Then, he fused them into a black iron tier Lord talent origin divine crystals. He looked over. A text notification appeared. Treasure name, Lord Talent Sphere, Hand of Wealth, Treasure Grade, Black Iron Tier, Treasure Effect. After absorbing it, the Lord will have the Black Iron Tier Lord Talent, Hand of Wealth. Treasure Description, a Lord Talent Sphere purified by the Supreme Will. You can obtain a yellow gold tier Lord Talent after absorbing it. Since I don't have the Black Iron Tier Lord Talent, I can only create a Black Iron Tier Lord Talent on the spot. Zhou looked at this Lord Talent and thought to himself. Actually, with the Lord Talent crystal fragment he could completely create a large number of low-level Lord Talents. But he understood that no matter how many low-level Lord Talents he had, they could not compare to the benefits that a high-level Lord Talent would bring him. In addition, upgrading other high-level Lord Talents required a large number of low-level Lord Talent crystal fragments to synthesize. Therefore, he had never used these low-level Lord Talent crystal fragments. However, this situation was different. It was fine to use a few pieces. He directly chose to absorb the 27th Lord Talent without hesitation. Soon, he finished absorbing it. Then, he looked at the talent information of this Lord Talent. Lord Talent, Hand of Wealth, Black Iron Tier, Specific Talent Effect 1, with the Hand of Wealth in hand, scoop into the void and you can randomly obtain 1 to 100 Black Iron Tier Mist Cores. This talent effect can be used once a day. Specific Talent Effect 2, when you and your subject extract the spoils of war from the corpse, there is a 1% chance of obtaining an additional Mist Core equivalent to the corpse's strength realm. After reading it, Zhou shook his head. He might be very interested in this Lord Talent if he had just descended to the high continent. But now, he could harvest hundreds or thousands of legendary tier Mist Cores every day. He was naturally not interested in such a weak increase in the drop of the Mist Core. However, this Lord Talent effect is quite useless. But it can be used to comprehend the Lord's law contained in it. Zhou thought to himself. Then, he closed his eyes and entered the Supreme Eye's perspective again to observe his body. Soon, he found the Black Iron Tier Lord Talent that represented the Hand of Wealth. His consciousness was immersed in it and a smile appeared on his face. Not bad. Even though it was still difficult to comprehend the nomological secret engravings of the Black Iron Tier Lord Talent, he could at least comprehend them normally. He saw his body in reality holding the Bodhi Supreme. At this moment, Zhou immediately felt that his comprehension had improved greatly again. Previously, Zhou Zhou had found it somewhat strenuous to comprehend the nomological engravings. Now, he no longer felt any difficulty at all. Comprehending the black iron level law engravings was as natural as eating and drinking. When Bodhi Supreme saw this scene, he praised the human in front of him. As expected of the chaos humans, he could actually comprehend this Supreme Lord's law normally. Even though he had the enhancement of the Bodhi heart and could only comprehend the Black Iron Lord talent law engravings, however, as long as the Lord in front of him took his time, the speed at which he comprehended the Lord talent's nomological patterns would become faster and faster. In fact, it was not impossible for him to become a God spirit with achievements with the Lord's law in the future. Chapter 658 Taking out a Portrait of Grandpa Mao. The sky gradually darkened. In a cultivation room in the advanced grade Lord's Paradise, a handsome man in the Emperor Dragon robe was sitting cross-legged on a mat and cultivating. This person was naturally Zhou Zhou. And above his head, a circular eye emitting a pure white light was focused on Zhou Zhou's body. This round pupil reflected the black iron law engravings, looking a little mysterious. A moment later, the pure white round pupil disappeared. Zhou Zhou, who was sitting cross-legged on the mat, slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with fatigue, and his face was a little pale. He looked like he had used up too much energy. I didn't expect that comprehending the Lord's laws would consume so much of my essence, energy, and spirit. Especially after using the Bodhi Supreme, the consumption has actually doubled. Now, I feel like I've stayed up for 3 to 4 nights when I was an ordinary person. Zhou Zhou took a deep breath. The Lord's law was indeed the strongest law that governed everything, so he wanted to continue using the Bodhi Supreme to increase his comprehension. The Bodhi Supreme had added too much to his comprehension. The difference in comprehension between him holding the Bodhi Supreme and him not holding it was 10 times or even greater. One had to know that he was a chaos human to begin with. He had a racial talent that greatly increased his perception, such as the high-level chaos core. But even so, he had actually been enhanced by the Bodhi Supreme so much. It could be seen that the Bodhi Supreme was top-notch. With a top-grade treasure like Bodhi Supreme, he would definitely be able to greatly increase his efficiency in comprehending the Lord's laws. With a flip of his right hand, he took out a bottle of Epic Tier Intermediate Restoration Potion and a bottle of Epic Tier Soul Restoration Potion. Then, he uncorked the bottle and drank it in one gulp. After tasting it for a while, he realized that his energy and soul fatigue had recovered slightly, but it was not as much as his chaos human constitution's self-recovery. He shook his head and gave up on taking the medicine. Then, he thought of something and smiled. He raised his right hand. The next second, his entire right arm was emitting a faint black iron light. Just like that, he raised his right hand and extended it into the void, until his arm completely disappeared into the void. Right on the heels of that, he made a rummaging motion. Soon, he seemed to have grabbed onto something as he retracted his right hand from the depths of the void. Then, with a flip of his right hand, some black iron tier mist cores appeared in his hand. 23 black iron tier mist cores, TSK, my luck isn't too good, Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. These 23 black iron tier mist cores were obtained by him through the hand of wealth, Lord Talent, that he had just obtained. Even though there were very few of them, Zhou Zhou did not mind. The next step is the most important. Zhou Zhou took a deep breath. His expression turned solemn. He raised his right hand and looked at it. Whoosh! Invisible nomological fluctuations rippled around him. This nomological fluctuation was extremely unstable. It was like a kite controlled by a new bee. It could leave his hand at any time, causing the kite to fail. Drops of sweat appeared on Zhou Zhou's forehead. He was trying his best to control the laws around him and condense them in his right hand. A moment later. Boom! Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. A soul-piercing explosion sounded. The dermic power fluctuations around Zhou Zhou suddenly became chaotic. Then, they suddenly exploded and dissipated. Zhou Zhou's expression was calm. It was just that his attempt had failed. He didn't say anything and tried again. 2 hours later. Zhou Zhou continued to use the Lord's law, but all of them failed without exception. Fortunately, such a failure would not cause any damage to Zhou Zhou's body. It would only make him more tired. It was just exhaustion. Naturally, he could not stop Zhou Zhou's enthusiasm for the Lord's laws. Therefore, he endured the double exhaustion of his spirit and body and continued to practice even more seriously. The 67th attempt. Zhou Zhou took a deep breath as his body emitted invisible nomological fluctuations again. Then, he forcefully retracted the nomological fluctuations towards his right arm. Soon, all the nomological fluctuations approached his right arm at a slow but firm speed and finally converged on it. At this moment, his right arm emitted an extremely faint black iron light. Zhou Zhou's expression remained solemn. He did not look smug at all. Retracting the nomological fluctuations to his right arm was something he could already do on the 35th time. However, the final step, which was to take the wealth from the void, was the most crucial part of his failure. He concentrated, raised his right arm, reached into the void, and began to fish. A moment later, Zhou Zhou was delighted. This was because he felt that his right hand, which was engraved with the Lord Talent, seemed to have grabbed something. At this point, his expression became even more solemn. Zhou Zhou slowly retracted his right arm from the void. When his arm was completely retracted from the void, his expression immediately became ecstatic. It worked. It did not fail. He jumped up from the futon excitedly. Zhou Zhou is talented in the Lord's law as expected. Ha 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 ha, Zhou Zhou laughed out loud. While he did not show anything on the surface during the previous dozens of failures, he was about to doubt his life. Thankfully, the bitter end was over, and he finally succeeded. Success my ass. Let's see what you're holding. At this moment, Bodhi Supreme's voice sounded again. Zhou Zhou was stunned. He had a bad feeling and looked at his right hand. He was holding a red note tightly in his hand. He opened it and was dumbfounded. Grandpa Mao. He looked left and right. No matter how he looked at it, he felt that this was a piece of Grandpa Mao. How am I going to take out one of Grandpa Mao's? Zhou Zhou was at a loss. This is considered a normal problem. Bodhi Supreme said. I'll record new knowledge for you tonight. Zhou Zhou said. Okay. The Bodhi Supreme was still very passionate about knowledge, especially the bloodline inheritance of this human who had grasped many high-level bloodline inheritances. It was still very envious. Because it knew a lot, but for some reason, most of the things it knew did not really belong to it. That was why it craved the knowledge that belonged to it. According to my observation, when you were applying the law engravings just now, in terms of wealth, you subconsciously thought of your Wuxia currency. This is actually very easy to understand. You've only been in the higher continent for a short period of time after all. The impression that Mist Core gave you is naturally far less than the impression that Grandpa Mao gave you. After all, the latter has accompanied you for more than 20 years. Try a few more times in the future and you'll get the Mist Core. Is that so? Zhou Zhou looked hesitant. He still felt a little dreamy about obtaining this picture of Grandpa Mao from the void. Chapter 659 The Omnipotent Lord Law. A strong enemy is attacking. Where did I get Grandpa Mao from? Zhou Zhou suddenly thought of this. This is another normal problem. I'll give them all to you in the future. Zhou Zhou's face darkened. This guy. Earth, in the security vault of a certain rich man in China. Bodhi Supreme said in satisfaction. In other words, my hand just returned to earth. Zhou Zhou glared at him. You were the one who used the power of the Lord's law to create the hand of wealth to go to earth. Your main body is actually still on the high continent. Keep this picture of Grandpa Mao well. In the future, when you become stronger, you might be able to use this Grandpa Mao as the coordinates and return to your hometown through the spatial passageway opened by the hand of wealth. Bodhi Supreme said lazily. Zhou Zhou's mouth widened slightly. An important reason why he wanted to become the Lord of all races was because he wanted to return to his hometown. They did not expect. He already had an approximate method. Even though the hand of wealth had only returned to the cerulean planet and not his main body. However, this also made Zhou Zhou excited enough. There was hope for the future after all. After coming back to his senses, Zhou Zhou felt more and more how terrifying this Lord's law was. This Lord law is simply like the source code of the myriad worlds. He muttered to himself. The act of withdrawing the money just now reminded him of some open-world game he had played in the past. As long as he entered a certain mysterious code, he could obtain money, weapons, equipment, and so on. That's right. If you completely master the Lord's law, you will be an omnipotent God in the endless heavens. Bodhi Supreme encouraged. Zhou Zhou nodded. A black iron tier Lord Talent's nomological engraving gave him such a surprise ability. If one grasped the top-notch Lord Law or even the complete Lord Law, it was indeed not a problem to say that he was omnipotent. After that, he did not continue to comprehend the Lord Talent Law engravings. Instead, he planned to rest. He was too tired. If he wanted to continue comprehending, he would probably have to rest until tomorrow. Originally, he wanted to use the Eye of the Heavens anger again after asking the Bodhi Supreme his questions. From the looks of it, it was better to think about it tomorrow. At this moment. Your Majesty, Prime Minister Jing requests an audience. And the Prime Minister said that he has something important to report to His Majesty. Atli quickly walked over and reported to Zhou Zhou. Important matters. Zhou Zhou was stunned. Then, he immediately asked Atli to bring Zheng Yuanqi over. Soon, Zheng Yuanqi arrived in front of Zhou Zhou. Your Majesty. About 10,000 kilometers away from the Blazing Sun Kingdom. A vast army of fog monsters is rushing towards the territory of our Blazing Sun Kingdom. Their total military strength is about 100 million. Zheng Yuanqi said solemnly. Zhou Zhou's pupils trembled. 100 million. Are you sure? He immediately asked. I've already gone and witnessed it myself. I'm very sure. Zheng Yuanqi looked like he was not joking. Zhou Zhou also realized the severity of the matter. 100 million fog monsters were definitely a terrifying combat power that could destroy his territory. However, he was still in disbelief. Even the total military strength of the fog monsters around the Night Empire was only about 1 billion. Moreover, not all of the total military strength of the billion fog monsters was dealing with the Night Empire. A considerable portion of the fog monster factions was dealing with the Lord factions around the Night Empire. What did he do to attract so many fog monster forces? I didn't feel much when I saw the Night Empire being besieged by the fog monster army. Now, the calamity of the tribulation of all races has finally landed on me. I can empathize now. But, I'm not an Empire-level Lord faction. Is there a need to send so many mist legions to besiege me? Zhou Zhou muttered. At this moment, he finally felt the terrifying pressure this calamity brought to the forces of the myriad races on the high continent. What would happen to the other Lord factions if even he was feeling the pressure? How's the average strength of the other party? After pondering for a long time, Zhou Zhou asked in a low voice. The other party is also extremely strong. According to the images recorded by the scouts. There's no lack of extraordinary tier, epic tier, and even legendary tier high-level fog monsters in the other party's army. As for the god spirit scarlet god spirits, the scouts haven't discovered them yet. Zheng Yuanqi said. Let me see the image. Zhou Zhou immediately said. Your Majesty, please take a look. Zheng Yuanqi took out a personal terminal created by Wen Ya's technology factory from his spatial ring. After opening a recording, he handed it to Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou took it and looked at it. He gradually frowned as he looked on. A moment later, Zhou Zhou returned the personal terminal to Zheng Yuanqi. A strong enemy, Zhou Zhou frowned. Ever since he came to the High Continent, other than the last demon lord he faced during the novice lord test, which gave him immense pressure, the fog monster army that came this time was the first enemy to give him such pressure. There were about 100 million fog monsters. There was no lack of extraordinary tier, epic tier, and even legendary tier scarlet experts. Even the scarlet god spirits might be hidden among them. It was just that they might not have discovered it yet. Such terrifying strength. Even if Zhou Zhou gathered all his forces to fight him, he was not confident that he could win. It might even become the losing side. According to their marching speed. How long will it take them to reach the border of our blazing sun kingdom? Zhou Zhou asked. Because they have a lot of troops. In addition, they will clear out the Lord's forces they pass along the way. I estimate that the fastest they can reach the border of our blazing sun kingdom should be around tomorrow night. Zheng Yuanqi said. Zhou Zhou frowned slightly. Tomorrow night. There was too little time. If he was given another 5 days to develop, even if it was 3 days, he was confident that he could gather at least equivalent military strength to fight the other party head-on. However, Zhou Zhou was not so confident if he came over tomorrow night. Moreover, as a fog monster, night was their home ground. Zhou Zhou and the others' combat strength would decrease because they were not used to the fog at night. On the other hand, the other party's combat strength would increase because of the richness of the scarlet fog. Zhou Zhou took a deep breath. Prime Minister. Gather all the combat professionals in the kingdom who are willing and capable of participating in the battle and form an endangered army. Take the meaning of accepting orders in times of danger. Arrange for the patrols and guards of various regional cities in the country before the fog monster forces attack. Also, recall Wuxia and his heavenly army and ask him to temporarily stop the map exploration operation. Return to the back kingdom immediately and gather the corresponding war information with all your might. Inform the subjects in the country about the impending war but don't say much. Just say that we will definitely win the war. Don't let the subjects in the country panic. That's the arrangement for the time being. If you have any suggestions, you can act according to the situation. But don't ask me too often and focus on efficiency. Zhou Zhou made arrangements. Chapter 660 War Gathering. There was no point in hiding it. A total of 100 million enemies had attacked. How could he hide this? Since that was the case, it was better to say it directly. He trusted Zheng Yuanqi's ability very much. He believed that Zheng Yuanqi could resolve this situation. Leave it to me, Your Majesty. Zheng Yuanqi said respectfully. Just as Zhou Zhou thought. As an old man who had served as the prime minister of 2 countries, Zheng Yuanqi had seen all kinds of situations. At this moment, he already had a series of solutions in his heart. Still. Most importantly. It still depended on victory on the main battlefield. Otherwise, they would lose on the main battlefield. It was useless no matter how well he arranged the rear. Zhou Zhou nodded. After arranging all of this, he felt much more at ease. A powerful army of about 100 million is not the best choice to fight head-on. I need to think of a way to weaken it first. Zhou Zhou thought to himself. After Zheng Yuanqi left, Zhou Zhou endured the fatigue in his soul and continued to record the various high-level bloodline inheritances in his mind. Zhou Zhou asked Wuxia to record these high-level bloodline inheritances as teaching material to train the territory's personnel. On the other hand, he had also used it as payment for the 2 questions he had asked the Bodhi Supreme previously. After paying him, Zhou Zhou took out another high-level bloodline inheritance and handed it to the Bodhi Supreme, exchanging it for the number of times he asked an ordinary question. "What question do you want to ask? Tell me." Bodhi Supreme said lazily. "Why did the fog monster army approach my territory and specifically come to look for me? Or are they just on the way?" Zhou Zhou asked. "I'm naturally here to look for you. You're the strongest lord under the 2 activities of the Supreme Will after all. Even the Supreme Will favors you very much. It's not easy for these scarlet forces to come out and invade the high continent. How can they not come and capture you? Capture you and offer you to the Crimson Overlord. The Crimson Overlord will definitely give you a large number of rewards." Zhou Zhou thought to himself. Well, he was so famous in the 2 activities of the Supreme Will. It would be strange if the Scarlet Fog monster forces under the Crimson Overlord did not react at all. There's another reason. They want your race divine artifact. At this moment, Bodhi Supreme reminded again. Race divine artifact. Zhou Zhou was stunned. You mean the lucky star? It's not just the lucky star. They also want the other 2 race divine artifacts in your hands. Bodhi Supreme said. Why do they need so many race divine artifacts? Could it be that they can use them? Zhou Zhou frowned. That's right. They have a pollution technique that can contaminate the race's divine artifact into a scarlet sacred artifact. This scarlet sacred artifact is similar to a race divine artifact, but there are no race restrictions. It can work on any scarlet fog monster. Their only limitation is that the range of the holy artifact effect is limited. Therefore, scarlet fog monsters yearn for the divine artifacts of any race. Zhou Zhou raised his eyebrows. Such a secret had never been mentioned in such detail, even for the high-level bloodline inheritances. As expected of the omniscient Bodhi Supreme. Thank you, I understand. Zhou Zhou nodded. It had to be said. It was convenient to have such an almost omniscient existence by his side. Moreover, this Bodhi Supreme was indeed very interesting. Even though it always said that it would only answer one question. However, it would answer other derivative questions on this problem in most cases as long as it was still related to the question. I'm in love. At this moment, Zhou Zhou knew the other party's motive for coming and felt much more at ease. At this moment, a large number of footsteps suddenly came from outside. Zhou Zhou went out to take a look. Indeed, Bai Yun and the others were back. A moment later, in a study room in the advanced grade Lord's Paradise. In a study. Zhou Zhou sat at the desk and looked at the list of battles that Bai Yun had just brought over. Today, they had killed a total of more than 86 million fog monsters and recaptured 33 extraordinary tier advanced grade spatial teleportation arrays, 7 epic tier advanced grade spatial teleportation arrays, and 3 legendary tier advanced grade spatial teleportation arrays. With the enhancement of the King of Loots and the title of the Strongest Lord, they had obtained a total of 2,360 legendary tier mist cores, 251,200 epic tier mist cores, 8,101,260 extraordinary tier mist cores, 42,503,900 diamond tier mist cores, 146,012,000 white platinum tier mist cores, more than 300 million yellow gold tier mist cores, more than 711 million white silver tier mist cores, and more than 106,000 green bronze tier mist cores. There were 2,016,990 skill books and 2,878,100 pieces of equipment. 101,800 billion units of basic materials. 2 million units of basic elemental gem resources. 2. 1 million units of high-level elemental gem resources. 320,000 origin crystals. 70,160 green bronze tier Lord Talent crystal fragments. 5 epic tier Lord Talent crystal fragments. 1 epic tier Scarlet Lord Talent sphere. 31 Holy Spirit tier Faith divine crystals. 16 Hero Inheritance secret manuals. 3 books of the God Spirit, mid-tier deity level elementary grade. 3 extraordinary tier ancestor statues of the human race on Cerulean planet. In addition, under Zhou Zhou's special instructions, Bai Yun and the others also specially brought back the corpses of 21 legendary tier fog monsters and 3 low-tier deity-level elementary grade scarlet god spirits. These enemies were all killed and preserved by Bai Yun and the others who led the army today. Each of them could obtain god spirit tier loots. This was the general situation of the loots. At this point, a smile appeared on Zhou Zhou's face. Putting everything else aside, for today's battle, in terms of the benefits of the mist cores alone, he had obtained a total of more than 150,000 legendary tier mist cores. In the future, he would no longer have to worry about not being able to afford the goods in the Lord's shop. In addition, there were other loots such as the epic tier Scarlet Lord Talent sphere. They were also top grade. The epic tier Scarlet Lord Talent sphere surprised Zhou Zhou the most. This was because this meant that he would have another epic tier advanced Lord Talent today. This Lord Talent was enough to create a top Cerulean planet Lord when they had just descended. He was not in a hurry to use this Lord Talent sphere. Finally, in terms of the increase in the combat strength of the soldiers, the total number and strength of Zhou Zhou's soldiers had also increased greatly throughout the day. Apart from the 2,518,276 fog monsters that he had insight defection with the enhancement of the extraordinary tier insight defection, the 20% of the insight defection troops handed over to him by the Lord members of the Star Alliance had also reached 2,861,250 fog monsters. In total, there were 5,422,886 fog monsters. And now, excluding the forces of the Star Alliance, the total number of troops under Zhou Zhou had already reached 47,547,748. Among them, were 3,353,682 black iron tier soldiers, 6,001,806 million green bronze tier soldiers, 10,028,900 white silver tier soldiers, 16,079,169 yellow gold tier soldiers, 10,662,850 white platinum tier soldiers, 1,251,860 diamond tier, 168,850 extraordinary tier, 625 in the epic tier and 6 in the legendary tier. In addition, Knight Rakshasa Sword God, Suan had broken through to the legendary tier. The Blood Fire Sword Spirit, Bai Yun, the Dragon Horse Spear General, Wuxia, the Ten-Directional Martial Emperor, Feng Luo had broken through to the legendary tier elementary grade. Soul Arrow, Wu Tu had broken through to extraordinary tier elementary grade. The original spirit race, Ansel had broken through to the extraordinary tier elementary grade. The others also had different improvements in strength. Zhou Zhou looked at the list and nodded slightly. Chapter 661 Epic Tier Lord Talent, Super Quests Master. In addition, Knight Rakshasa Sword God, Suan had broken through to the legendary tier. The Blood Fire Sword Spirit, Bai Yun, the Dragon Horse Spear General, Wuxia, the Ten-Directional Martial Emperor, Feng Luo had broken through to the legendary tier elementary grade. Soul Arrow, Wu Tu had broken through to extraordinary tier elementary grade. The original spirit race, Ansel had broken through to the extraordinary tier elementary grade. The others also had different increases in strength. Zhou Zhou looked at the list and nodded slightly. Now, the total military strength under his command, coupled with the more than 1 million troops of the Star Alliance, had already reached more than 73 million. After Zhou Zhou calculated this result, a smile appeared on his face. With so many troops around, the difference between them and the fog monsters was not very great. He undoubtedly felt more confident about those enemies. Then, he began to deal with the loots. First, Zhou Zhou looked at the epic tier Scarlet Lord Talent Sphere. A text notification appeared. Do you want to purify it? Purify. Zhou Zhou said expectantly. The next second, a golden light flashed on the Scarlet Lord Talent Sphere. Then, the blood-colored light on the Scarlet Lord Talent Sphere disappeared. At this moment, its message has also changed. Treasure name, Lord Talent Sphere, Super Quests Master, Treasure Grade, Epic Tier, Treasure Effect. After absorbing it, the Lord will have an Epic Tier Lord Talent, Super Quests Master. Treasure Description, a Lord Talent Sphere purified by the Supreme Will. After absorbing it, you can obtain an Epic Tier Lord Talent. Super Quests Expert. Lord Talent related to quests. Zhou Zhou pondered. Then, he did not think too much about it and chose to absorb it. Soon, the Epic Tier Lord Talent Sphere immediately turned into countless purple light spots and surged into his glabella. Zhou Zhou closed his eyes. A moment later, he reopened his eyes again after some time. Then, he immediately opened his Lord's personal information. The 28th Lord Talent appeared in his Lord Talent column. Not bad, not bad. The more Lord Talents I have, the stronger my Lord Law Talent will be. I will be able to walk further on this path in the future. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. Then, he opened the details of the talent. Lord Talent, Super Quests Master, Epic Tier, Super Quest Master, you are a fanatic about quests. No matter what quest it is, you can maintain 200% enthusiasm to complete it. During the long-term completion of quests, you have gradually nurtured a pair of eyes that can discover quests and always find the trick to completing them easier. You believe that there is no quest that you can't complete because you have endless ideas. Specific Talent Effect 1, your eyes can see targets with quests and hidden missions. Specific Talent Effect 2, when you communicate with the target with the quests, there is a certain chance of triggering the quest notification, making it easier for you to obtain the quest from the other party. Specific Talent Effect 2, when you communicate with the target with the quests, there is a certain chance of triggering the quest notification, making it easier for you to obtain the quest from the other party. Specific Talent Effect 4, there is a very small chance of obtaining additional mission rewards and a high chance of triggering subsequent quests after you complete the mission. Specific Talent Effect 5, you are a famous quest master. After other life forms hear your reputation, there is a certain chance that they will take the initiative to find you and issue quests to you. This Lord Talent looks quite useful. Zhou Zhou looked at this Lord Talent a few times and clicked his tongue in wonder. He thought for a moment and walked out of the advanced grade Lord's Paradise. He walked on the street and prepared to test the specific effect of this Lord Talent. In the capital. Jade Sun Park. This was the largest park in the Blazing Sun Kingdom. It was personally ordered by Zheng Yuanqi and covered an astonishing 10,000 square kilometers. Such an area was comparable to the size of a city on the Cerulean planet and could accommodate 4 to 5 million people. The reason why it was built so big. Firstly, it was because the population of the Blazing Sun Kingdom was increasing. In order to allow more and more subjects to have places to relax and entertain in the future, this Jade Sun Park was built. Secondly, it was because there were many subject races in the Blazing Sun Kingdom. There was no lack of subjects as huge as the dragon race. In order to make Jade Sun Park a place that could accommodate the recreation and entertainment of many races, Zheng Yuanqi built this park so big. He even had plans to expand in the future. At this moment, Zhou Zhou was strolling by a lake called the Leaping Fish Lake in Jade Sun Park. Along the way, he saw more than 10 people in front of him, sitting on a small bench on a stone by the lake with a fishing rod in their hands, fishing leisurely. Zhou Zhou clicked his tongue in wonder. Then, he prepared to leave. But at this moment. He suddenly looked at the top of one of the fishermen's heads as if he had seen a ghost. A bright golden exclamation mark floated above. Zhou Zhou could not help but fall into deep thought. He must have played too many online games, right? However, it had to be said that such a notification was indeed quite eye-catching. Zhou Zhou put on a mask and turned into a middle-aged man after some thought. Then, he walked over and came to the other party's side. He was about to speak when he saw the person in front of him shushing him with a serious expression. Then, he pointed at the lake. Zhou Zhou nodded and sat down beside him without saying anything else. However, even though he had sat down, he did not plan to stop. Instead, he sized this person up. He looked like a middle-aged man with short hair. His hair was a little messy, and his gaze was patient and determined. Then, his gaze landed on the other party's fishing rod. At this moment, a line of golden text suddenly appeared. Quest hint: this is Yu Huan's favorite golden bamboo jade rod. Few people know it. If you mention it to Yu Huan, he will have a certain favorable impression of you. Zhou Zhou raised his eyebrows. He thought for a moment and pretended to be surprised. This is the golden bamboo jade patterned rod, right? Hey, you know. As soon as he finished speaking, the fisherman, who had just ignored him, suddenly turned to look at him with a surprised expression. Of course I've heard of such a famous fishing rod. Zhou Zhou said seriously. Not bad, not bad. This is the golden bamboo jade patterned rod. Brother, you know your stuff. Sigh, when I first moved here, no one nearby recognized this top-grade fishing rod. It's really frustrating. I thought I was in the desert of the fisher. Speaking of which, I heard that the Blazing Sun Kingdom used to be a huge desert. I really couldn't tell at all. Yu Huan rambled on. It was as if talking about fishing could open his mouth. Zhou Zhou smiled and listened as he communicated with the other party from time to time. Big brother seems to like to fish. Zhou Zhou chatted. It's not just like. It's also work. I don't have any other skills, but I know how to fish. But fishing is also difficult. I earn very little missed cores. It can only supplement my family's expenses. My son, Yu Wang, has also grown up. I'm thinking of exchanging the golden bamboo and jade rod in my hand for 2 diamond-tier missed cores to find him a wife. Aren't there many girls in the city now? And all of them look like thieves. If we don't get married now, won't the good-looking ones be snatched away so quickly in the future? Yu Huan muttered. This fishing rod is a very important treasure to Big Brother, right? Zhou Zhou glanced at the golden bamboo and jade patterned rod. White platinum tier advanced grades fishing rod. It could increase the experience of the fisherman's life class during the fishing process. There were also a few exclusive fishing skills, other than that. Even though it was a little old, selling them for 2 to 3 diamond tier missed cores together was indeed not a scam. It's very important. It's the reward of the champion, the king of fish, I obtained in a regional fishing competition. I've loved fishing for most of my life. This fishing rod can be said to be my greatest achievement in fishing. It's better not to sell such a meaningful item, you can think of another way to make money. Zhou Zhou hesitated for a moment and suggested. Yu Huan shook his head and grinned. I want to sell it. Fishing was my greatest achievement until I had my son. As soon as he finished speaking, a quest notification appeared. Chapter 662 Quest, Greatest Achievement. Your subject, Yu Huan, has issued you a subject quest. Quest name, Greatest Achievement, Quality of Quests, White Platinum Tier Advanced Grade. Quest content, Yu Huan wants to find a satisfactory woman for his son, Yu Wang, to be his wife in this wave of immigration. Therefore, he wants to sell his precious fishing rod, the golden bamboo jade patterned rod, to sell the mist core and buy his fishing rod to satisfy his wish. Mission reward, white platinum tier advanced grade fishing rod, golden bamboo jade patterned rod, as well as blueprints, white platinum tier advanced grade fisherman's fishing exp, 10 diamond tier mist cores, Yu Huan's gratitude, and Yu Wang's friendship, extra reward. Zhou Zhou looked at the mission. It was just a normal quest, so the mission reward was not too special. The only thing that surprised Zhou Zhou was that Yu Huan's son, Yu Wang's friendship was actually an additional reward to him. Zhou Zhou smacked his lips. Never mind, it was just an ordinary quest, not a hidden mission. How could he ask for any high-level rewards? Moreover, he remembered that he had accepted a quest from Deadwood Village in the past. There was also a child's friendship inside that had become one of the quest's rewards. Looking at it this way, it did not seem strange to use the friendship of children as a mission reward. He did not mind. He took out 2 diamond tier mist cores and handed them to Yu Huan with a smile. I quite like this golden bamboo jade rod, since Big Brother is willing to part with it, how about selling it to me? Really? Yu Huan was stunned and could not react for a moment. When she reacted, she was immediately excited. Heaven took pity on him. He had spent countless efforts in order to find a suitable seller to buy his precious fishing rod and was willing to pay to no avail. Originally, he did not believe the legend that the Blazing Sun Kingdom, which had a rather good green environment, was located in the desert. However, after realizing that not many people bought his fishing rod, he had to believe it even if he didn't want to. God had actually sent the seller he wanted to him just as he was worried. The more Yu Huan looked at Zhou Zhou, the more satisfied she felt. Since this brother knew the golden bamboo jade rod, it meant that he was also a person who liked to fish. He did not have to worry about his fishing rod being wasted if he handed his treasures to the other party. Thank you, brother. Yu Huan sighed. Then, the two of them handed over the mist core and the fishing rod in one hand and each obtained what they wanted. Still, when Yu Huan handed over the fishing rod, his eyes were still filled with reluctance. However, when he thought of his son, the reluctance in his eyes disappeared and a faint smile appeared on his face. On the other side, after Zhou Zhou obtained the fishing rod, a quest notification immediately appeared in front of him. Prompt. Mission quest, the greatest achievement has been completed. Mission reward, yellow gold tier advanced grade fishing rod, golden bamboo jade striped rod, as well as blueprints, white platinum tier advanced grade fisherman's fishing experience, 10 diamond tier mist cores, Yu Huan's thanks, and Yu Wang's friendship, extra reward, have been distributed. Big brother. It's getting late. I'll go back and rest first. Don't go back too late. Zhou Zhou stood up and said. Okay. Yu Huan smiled and nodded. After Zhou Zhou left, he looked at the lake in front of him and sighed. If it was in the past, he would most likely stay here to fish at night and earn more mist cores for his family. But now that the fishing rod was gone, he could only. Yu Huan's eyes suddenly widened. Because he suddenly saw his precious fishing rod was actually quietly placed on the fishing gear behind him. Brother! You forgot your fishing rod. He hurriedly stood up and shouted at the figure in the distance. I suddenly don't want it anymore. Big brother, keep it for yourself. You don't have to return the mist cores to me. The figure in the distance waved without turning his head. At this moment, how could Yu Huan not understand? He had met a good person. At this moment, his body suddenly trembled. He stared fixedly at the back of the figure in the distance. At the same time, his voice began to replay in his mind many times. This back view. This voice, why does it look so much like His Majesty? Is it so difficult that the person I was chatting with just now was His Majesty? Yu Huan muttered to himself. While this idea was a guess, for some reason, he believed his guess very much. Perhaps this was a man's intuition. On the other side, Zhou Zhou did not care about the fishing rod. He was already very satisfied with exchanging 2 diamond-tier mist cores for so many rewards. Why snatch what others loved? He did not return to the advanced grade Lord's Paradise. Instead, he continued to stroll around the territory and try to obtain some quests. Yu Huan's quest gave him some benefits. He felt that he could not stop now, as if he had really become a super quests expert. In the next 2 hours, with the hint given by the Lord Talent of the super quests expert, Zhou Zhou had actually triggered 3 more quests in a short period of time. Even though they were all normal quests, he had also obtained rewards for the total value of more than 100 extraordinary tier mist cores. In addition, he had also obtained a lot of skills, equipment, class experience, and even some interesting small tools, allowing him to fully satisfy the addiction of a super quests master. Time to go back. Zhou Zhou handed a letter to an old man. After making the old pen pal smile, he successfully obtained the mission reward. The reward was not much, but he was enjoying it. However, he could not continue. This was because he wanted to go back and rest. He had been comprehending the Lord's law previously and made himself so tired. He had yet to rest. At the thought of this, after bidding farewell to this old man, he rushed towards his advanced grade Lord's Paradise. On the way back, Zhou Zhou also took off his mask. Then, he pondered as he walked. I can try not wearing a mask tomorrow and trigger the quests with my true identity. Zhou Zhou thought. His status as a lord would give others, especially the subjects in the territory, a huge sense of reliability. This feeling would make it easier to obtain higher-level quests even though it was easy to pull away from normal subjects. Your Majesty. At this moment, a surprised and familiar voice sounded. Zhou Zhou was stunned and looked over. A girl was running towards him. It was Bao Xiu'er, whom he had not seen for a long time. Zhou Zhou had a deep impression of this tailor who had followed him the earliest in the territory. After all, the other party had mended his clothes many times. Long time no see. Zhou Zhou smiled. Your Majesty, nobles are forgetful. I'm afraid you've already forgotten about me, right? Bao Xiu'er was quite excited at first. After hearing Zhou Zhou's words, she said bitterly and disappointedly. Zhou Zhou coughed lightly. He knew that the other party seemed to be interested in him. However, he could not force it. Where's teacher Li Huiyue? How's her body? Zhou Zhou changed the topic. Grandmaster's body has completely recovered. And, Xiu'er, who are you talking to? Before Bao Xiu'er could finish speaking, he heard a woman's voice coming from behind her. Then, a middle-aged couple walked over. When they arrived, not only were they stunned, even Zhou Zhou was stunned. Chapter 663 Li Huiyu's background. Mid-tier deity level hidden mission. Teacher Li. Elder Bai. Zhou Zhou's eyes widened. This pair of old men advancing in parallel, their eyes filled with love and warmth, were Li Huiyue and Bai Yuejing. Li Huiyue and Zhou Zhou were not surprised. But Elder Bai, what are you doing? At this moment, Zhou Zhou's mind raced. He quickly thought of the most correct possibility. Li Huiyue was cured by Elder Bai. Could the two of them have feelings for each other during the treatment and were now together? At the thought of this, he widened his eyes and looked at the couple, his eyes filled with gossip. Your Majesty, please listen to my explanation. When Bai Yuejing saw Zhou Zhou's expression, she knew what he was thinking and explained with a bitter smile. Zhou Zhou nodded. Tell me and I will believe them all. Seeing this, Bai Yuejing could only explain first. The content of his explanation was almost the same as Zhou Zhou's guess. Previously, when Bai Yuejing treated Li Huiyu's condition to a certain extent, Li Huiyue was still very weak. Following the principle of a doctor saving people to the end, Bai Yujing came to Li Huiwe every day to do follow-up treatment. Under Bai Yujing's meticulous treatment and care, both sides gradually understood each other better. During the process of understanding, feelings gradually developed between them. In the end, Li Huiwe stopped pretending and took the initiative to chase after Bai Yujing, this old handsome man. Bai Yujing was also very tempted by this old beauty with an extraordinary aura. Therefore, the two sides gradually came together. 2 days ago. They had even become a legal couple under the witness of the officials of the marriage department in the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Why didn't you call me for such a big matter? Zhou Zhou said regretfully. His Majesty is busy every day. You were also busy with the activities of the King of 10,000 Kings. After discussing it with Huiyue, I didn't tell your Majesty about us. However, we haven't held a wedding banquet yet. We're just registered in the marriage department. In the future, if your Majesty is willing and has time, please come when we hold the wedding banquet. Bai Yujing smiled. Of course. I'll definitely go then. Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. The old couple in front of him had a deep relationship with him. Zhou Zhou naturally had to witness it with his own eyes now that they could get together. At that time, we will welcome your Majesty. Bai Yujing smiled. Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. At this moment, Li Huiwe looked at Zhou Zhou and hesitated for a moment before suddenly asking, Your Majesty. How's the situation outside now? Don't worry, everything is under control. Zhou Zhou was stunned before saying. Li Huiwe nodded hesitantly. The three people present could vaguely tell that Li Huiwe had something to say. Zhou Zhou found it a little strange. But at this moment, a rainbow-colored exclamation mark appeared above Li Huiyu's head. At the same time, a line of rainbow-colored text slowly appeared. Hidden mission hint, tell Li Huiwe how powerful the Blazing Sun Kingdom is now. Perhaps she has something else to tell you. Zhou Zhou was slightly surprised. It was actually a hidden mission. He thought for a moment and said seriously to Li Huiwe, just live in the capital in peace. Don't worry about anything else. Our Blazing Sun Kingdom is very powerful now. Not only does it have a lot of soldiers, but a god spirit was even born in the territory 2 days ago. Moreover, the other party has already agreed to serve the kingdom. I don't dare to say anything else with our current strength. At least conquering an intermediate kingdom is simple. Even if the advanced kingdom leads the entire military force to our Blazing Sun Kingdom, they might not be able to take down our Blazing Sun Kingdom. Li Huiwe took a deep breath and her eyes became determined. Your Majesty. Li Huiwe has a request. Li Huiwe said solemnly. Zhou Zhou looked at her and nodded. Let's not stand there and talk. Let's talk in this king's blessed land. Yes, Your Majesty. Li Huiwe nodded. Then, he looked at Bai Yujing, who seemed to know what was going on, and Bao Xiu'er, who was at a loss. He said gently, Yujing, Xiu'er, come with us. The two of them could only nod in agreement. A moment later, in a study room in the advanced grade Lord's Paradise. In a spacious lounge. Zhou Zhou and the others were sitting there. Let me tell you about my situation first. Li Huiwe took a deep breath and said wistfully, before I came to the Blazing Sun Kingdom in the future, I was born in the Advanced Kingdom, the New Wind Kingdom. I was the third daughter of the last king of the New Wind Kingdom, Feng He. I was also a princess before the fall of the country. At this point, she laughed at herself. Everything was going very peacefully. But one day, everything changed. Because a mist source was naturally born in the territory of our kingdom. Mist source. As soon as she finished speaking, Bao Xiu'er exclaimed. No one present blamed her. This was because even Zhou Zhou was shocked by the words mist source. According to the records of the light sacred dragon bloodline in his body, the so-called mist source It was also known as the cultivationless age, prime murderer, scarlet spreader, and the cancer of all realms. It was a product of an invasion created by the Crimson Overlord in order to invade the worlds under the supreme will. This mist source would randomly appear in a certain world in the endless heavens. After it appeared, it would seal off this world or a certain area. Then, it would spread scarlet fog in this world or this area and transform all living beings in the sealed area into fog creatures. This was because the speed at which the fog was spread and transformed into scarlet creatures was too fast. Most of the life forms sealed could not even escape. They became muddle-headed fog creatures. In the history of the myriad worlds, there were many examples of the entire world falling into a fog world because of a mist source. It could be seen how terrifying this small mist source was. My father and mother doted on us the most. After sending us children out of the range of the mist source, they were transformed into fog creatures by the mist source before they could escape. Your Majesty. Li Huiyue looked at Zhou Zhou and begged, I know that my father, mother, and the subjects of the entire New Wind Kingdom can't be saved. But I don't want them to be humiliated after they die. I beg your Majesty to go conquer the fallen New Wind Demon Kingdom when you have enough strength in the future and give father, mother, and the New Wind subjects, freedom. May I? Your Majesty. As soon as he finished speaking, a quest notification appeared. Your subject Li Huiyue has issued a quest to you. Quest name, Conquer the New Wind Demon Kingdom, quality of quest, mid-tier deity level advanced grade, obscure, quest description, the New Wind Kingdom that was once famous for flying freely in the sky has been reduced to a fog country because of a naturally born mist source. Agree to the request of the princess of the fallen country and lead troops to conquer the New Wind Kingdom and save their free souls who are unwilling to fall into the fallen. Mission reward, lost treasure of the New Wind Kingdom. Zhou Zhou looked at the mission thoughtfully. Chapter 664 The new ancestor statue of the human race on Cerulean planet. Zhou Zhou's expression was a little serious. A hidden mission for a mid-tier deity level advanced grade. This was the first time he had seen such a high-level hidden mission. The difficulty behind this mission was probably not small and should be at least mid-tier deity level enemies. Where's the New Wind Kingdom? Zhou Zhou asked. My father knows that the fall of the New Wind Kingdom is an irreversible fact. Therefore, he activated a mid-tier deity level advanced grade array, Wind King barrier before he completely fell, completely closing the entire New Wind Kingdom. The current New Wind Demon Kingdom has been completely hidden on the high continent because of the Wind King barrier. Even a high-tier deity level might not be able to find the location of the New Wind Kingdom. However, this Wind King barrier can be opened with the New Wind Royal Bloodline. This is the map of the New Wind Kingdom. Your Majesty, please accept it. Li Huiyue said. Then, he took out a golden silk map from his spatial ring and handed it to Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou took it and read it. Soon, he heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, not very far. With the current speed of the Starry Night, they should be able to arrive after flying at full speed for about a day. He put away the map and said to Li Huiyue, I can't leave for the time being. I'll take a look when I have time in 2 days. Thank you, Your Majesty. Li Huiyue was about to kneel when Zhou Zhou hurriedly helped her up. Her eyes were filled with tears. Clearly, this matter had been in her heart for too long. You were so seriously injured previously. Could it be? Zhou Zhou suddenly thought of this and asked curiously. Li Huiyue nodded and sighed softly. I really missed my family, so I went to the New Wind Demon Kingdom alone. I wanted to use the secret passage to see my parents, but I was severely injured by the New Wind Demon soldiers at the outermost area before I could see my parents. I dragged my severely injured body to Fish Spring Town to rest. Then, I happened to encounter my disciple and His Majesty. It could be considered a blessing in disguise. At this point, she looked at Zhou Zhou and Bai Yuejing beside her. If not for that injury, he might not be able to meet his disciple, Lord, and loved ones in his life. It could be considered a blessing in disguise. Everyone nodded. According to His Majesty's hometown language, this is called a blessing in disguise. Bao Xiu'er quickly came back to her senses from the fact that her grandmaster was the princess of a fallen country and said with a smile. She accepted it very quickly. In another world, the princess of a fallen country might be a very precious species. But in the high continent, new kingdoms were established and destroyed every day. Not to mention the princess of a fallen country. It was not uncommon for descendants of the god spirit to decline. Among the people present, only Bai Yuejing sighed softly. Li Huiyue and him had known about this during the treatment. Originally, he did not want the person he loved to be in danger after almost dying. However, looking at the scene in front of him, he knew that it was useless for him to say too much. Forget it, forget it. Just as well. With His Majesty's current power, he might really be able to save the new Wind Demon Kingdom. This could also resolve the knot in Li Huiyu's heart. Bai Yuejing thought to himself. After Zhou Zhou was concerned about their recent matters, he bade farewell to everyone and returned to his advanced grade Lord's Paradise. In the study, Zhou Zhou sat on a throne made of golden cedar wood and recalled what had happened tonight. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this super quests had astonishing potential. In just one night, he had obtained many mist cores and valuable items. He had also obtained a hidden mission for a mid-tier deity-level advanced grade. The reward for this mission was the lost treasure of an entire high-level kingdom. Even though there was a coincidence, it could be seen that this Lord Talent had huge potential. My previous guess was right. The strength, power, and status represented by my identity also determines what quests I can receive. For example, when I was wearing a mask previously, I could only receive some ordinary middle and low-level quests. Even though the rewards I obtained are also of a certain value, they're only ordinary to the current me. At most, they're a little novel. And when I put down my mask and came into contact with quests as myself, I directly obtained a hidden mission for a mid-tier deity-level advanced grade. If I had worn a mask to meet Teacher Li Huiyue, she definitely wouldn't have handed her identity and the new Wind Demon Kingdom's entrustment to me without knowing my identity and ability. Even if I can know that she has a hidden mission through the mission notification given by my talent, I might not be able to trigger it. Thinking of this, Zhou Zhou nodded slightly. Since that was the case. In the future, if he wanted to do missions, he would try his best to do them with his true identity. Otherwise, it would be a waste of his experience and title. As the strongest lord of all races, the owner of the race's divine artifact, the owner of the chaos human bloodline, the lord favored by the supreme will. This Lord Talent could not be more suitable for him. He came back to his senses. Zhou Zhou took out 3 gray humanoid statues. This gray willful statue depicted a middle-aged man with a tall crown on his head, a thin face, and a neat black beard. He looked over. A text notification appeared. Treasure name, Ancestor Statue of the Human Race on Cerulean Planet, Zhongheng, Treasure Grade, Extraordinary Tier, Treasure Effect, place it in the shrine of the Imperial Ancestral Temple and activate the Ancestor Statue's Ancestral Enhancement Effect on territory, subjects, or lords. Treasure Description, Zhongheng, Courtesy Name Pingzi, Han Chinese. He was from Xie, Nanyang, and one of the 5 sages of Nanyang. He was a great astronomer, mathematician, inventor, geographer, and literary scholar during the Eastern Han Dynasty of China. He was praised by later generations as the Wood Sage, Sage of Science. Its ancestor Zhongheng, Zhou Zhou came to a realization. He had a deep impression of this ancestor. He remembered watching a children's animation when he was young. It told the story of this ancestor making a guide car. At that time, he was very curious. Why was the wooden man's finger pointing south even though the direction of the guidance car had clearly changed? He did not understand it in the end, and he did not expect to obtain the statue of this ancestor today. As for the other two ancestor statues of the human race on the cerulean planet, they were naturally the two additional ancestor statues that Zhang Heng had dropped with the help of his lord title. Zhou Zhou first picked up two of them and fused them into an epic-tier ancestor statue of Zhang Heng. Then, he took this ancestor statue to the Imperial Ancestral Temple. Chapter 665 Treasure, Hofeng Earthquake Device Imperial Ancestral Temple. Zhou Zhou looked at the scene in front of him. 4 10-meter-tall red shrines were neatly placed on the altar. 3 of the shrines worshipped the statues of Sun Simiao, Gong Shuban, and Lu Bai's ancestors. The other 3 shrines were empty. Thick spatial power erupted, forming a spatial passageway with endless suction behind it, directly sucking it into the spatial rift. Zhou Zhou could not help but complain in his heart. He had killed more than 100 million fog monsters under his command. However, there were only a few ancestor statues of humans on Cerulean planet. This was not a matter of drop rate. His drop rate was already maxed out. The fog monsters that could drop ancestral statues were too random and rare. When he was in the World Channel, he had seen other lords drop the ancestor statue of the human race on Cerulean planet. However, no one sold it at all. Zhou Zhou, the king of loots, could only covet such a situation. He didn't think too much about it. He directly took out Zhang Heng's ancestral statue and carefully placed it in an empty shrine with the art of control. The next second, the entire hall shook slightly. A deep and solemn middle-aged man's voice sounded. It's better to retreat and form a net than to envy fish in the abyss. So this is what Zhang Heng's ancestor said. Zhou Zhou mourned for a second for his language and historical standard. At this moment, a new text notification appeared. You have placed an epic-tier ancestor statue of the human race on Cerulean planet in the shrine of the Imperial Ancestral Temple, Zhang Heng. You have activated the exclusive ancestral enhancement effect, climate, wind and earth seismoscope. The current ancestor statue has been updated. Current ancestral enhancement effect has been updated. The next second, a huge golden climate, wind and earth seismoscope that was 20 to 30 feet tall gradually appeared on the ground in front of Zhang Heng's ancestor statue. Zhou Zhou looked at the climate, wind and earth seismoscope. Its entire body was golden in color. It looked like a wine goblet. There were 8 dragon heads set up outside the goblet. Each dragon head had a small copper pill in its mouth, and under each dragon head was a toad with its mouth open. The climate, wind and earth seismoscope, the world's first instrument to observe earthquakes. Unbelievable. As expected of a saint. Zhou Zhou looked at the seismograph and felt very emotional. If it was in the modern world, it would not be strange for people to observe earthquakes with all kinds of advanced technology. In the ancient times when technology was backward, Zhang Heng had forcefully created such a black technology without the help of various scientific instruments. Just thinking about it made him feel ridiculous. He looked at the information on the device. A text notification appeared. Treasure name, climate, wind and earth seismoscope, treasure grade, epic tier, treasure effect 1. When all the professionals in the territory create related class actions, their manufacturing efficiency will increase by 800%. At the same time, during the manufacturing process, there is a very small chance that they will suddenly be inspired and create new item manufacturing blueprints. Treasure effect 2. The potential of all physician-related professionals in the territory will increase by 2 levels. It cannot surpass the legendary tier advance grade at most. If you leave the territory, the enhancement of your potential will be ineffective. Treasure effect 3. When an earthquake occurs within 10,000 kilometers of the climate, wind and earth seismoscope, it can calm the earthquake for 3 days. Cooldown, 10 days. Treasure Introduction. Life is hard work. If you don't want it, how can you obtain it? Prompt. This treasure is exclusive to the Imperial Ancestral Temple. It cannot be worn down, lost, or destroyed. Zhou Zhou looked at the treasure effect of the climate, wind and earth seismoscope and took a deep breath. Even though this climate, wind and earth seismoscope was still a little inferior to the effect of Ancestor Sun Simiao's 1,000 gold medicine recipe, it was also very strong. Firstly, 800% manufacturing efficiency was already very exaggerated. Professionals in other territories could only do 1 day of work a day. The professionals of the professional kingdom could work for 8 days a day. Moreover, during the production process, there was actually a chance of comprehending a new item creation blueprint. Good God! The King of Internal Scrolls Plus Inventor is talking about you. As for its treasure effect too, it directly increased the potential of the professionals in his territory by a large level. Even though the upper limit was Epic Tier Advanced Grade, this was also a height that many life forms could only dream of. The third treasure's ability to suppress earthquakes was similar to his Lord Talent, Peaceful Times. His Lord Talent, Peaceful Times, could prevent natural disasters from happening in his territory. Of course, he could bring this treasure out of the territory and suppress the earthquake outside the territory. He could use this ability. A top-grade treasure. Zhou Zhou was all smiles. As expected of the epic tier Cerulean planet's ancestor statue. The effect did not disappoint him. Then, he left the Imperial Ancestral Temple and returned to Advanced Grade Lord's Paradise. In a study room in the Advanced Grade Lord's Paradise. In a loot's warehouse. This was a special place that came with the blessed land to process, sort, and store loots. It occupied a rather large area, which was enough to store a large number of loots. After Zhou Zhou arrived, he took out the corpses of the 21 legendary tier fog monsters and 3 low-tier deity-level elementary grade scarlet fog god spirits that he had obtained during the faction quests today. A smile appeared on Zhou Zhou's face as he looked at the corpses of so many high-level experts. A moment later, all the corpses had been extracted. The corpses of 21 legendary tier fog monsters provided Zhou Zhou with a total of 1,150 low-tier deity-level divine crystals. 18 low-tier deity-level hero inheritance secret manuals. 189 low-tier deity-level divine artifacts. 260 low-tier deity-level law skills. 21 low-tier deity-level book of the god spirit. 252 green bronze tier Lord Talent crystal fragments. And 56 low-tier deity-level treasures. For example, low-tier deity-level potions, scrolls, and materials. As for the 3 low-tier deity-level elementary grade scarlet god spirits, they provided Zhou Zhou with 220 low-tier deity-level elementary grade divine crystals, 3 low-tier deity-level elementary grade hero inheritance secret manuals. 3 mid-tier deity-level elementary grade divine artifacts, Fiery Fist. 18 mid-tier deity-level elementary grade law skills. 3 mid-tier deity-level elementary grade books of the god spirit. 26 green bronze tier Lord Talent crystal fragments. 12 mid-tier deity-level potions, scroll materials, and other god-tier items. This low-tier deity-level scarlet god spirit is too poor. Of the 3 god spirits, only one of them has a low-tier deity-level divine artifact. Zhou Zhou was speechless. It seemed that the lack of divine artifacts was the same for the god spirits under the Supreme Will and the god spirits under the Crimson Overlord. Still, he looked at the divine artifact in the king's treasure box that was about to pile up into a small mountain. He kept feeling that there was something wrong with the style of the divine artifact on his side. It's all brought about by my Lord Talent. Speaking of which, my Lord Talent as the King of Loots is really abnormal. I feel that the only level of the mythical tier is not enough to describe it. Zhou Zhou could not help but sigh. Then, he did not think too much about it. Instead, he called Atli and Aliyah over and asked them to gather by Yun, Wuxia, and the other generals of the main territories, as well as the lords of the Star Alliance, to the conference hall to discuss matters later. The two sisters took their orders and left. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.